Hello, everyone. I call this meeting to order of Tuesday, February 16th, 2025. We will be adjourning for a closed session, but first, can we have a roll call?
Councilmember Andrews,
Present.
Councilmember Beckman,
Here.
Councilmember Casissa,
Here.
Vice Mayor Thomas. Here. Mayor Ravazio.
Here. And can you join me, please, for a pledge of allegiance to the flag? Pledge of allegiance to the flag of the Okay, I think we open for public comment if anyone has any concerns about our closed session coming up. Not seeing any here. Is there anything online?
We don't have any public comment for closed session.
Okay, so we will adjourn to closed session and report back at 6:30. I hereby call this meeting to order of Tuesday, February 16th, 2025, the regular town council meeting. We were just in closed session, but have nothing to report out. Can we have a roll call, please?
Thank you, Mayor Ravazio. Councilmember Andrews,
Present.
Councilmember Beckman,
Here.
Councilmember Casissa,
Here.
Vice Mayor Thomas. Here. Mayor Ravazio.
Here. And we also did the Pledge of Allegiance prior to our last meeting. So unless anyone in the audience really needs to do the Pledge of Allegiance, today we will move on to open time for public comment. This is a chance for any member of the public to express the town council concerning any item not on the council's agenda. Speakers will be limited to 3 minutes unless otherwise specified. So are there any audience members who would like to have your 3 minutes of fame? Thank you. Is the microphone on?
Green light good? Okay. So hello, my name is Stephanie Hall. I'm a union electrician with the International Brotherhood of Electrical Workers, Local 551. I'm sure I don't look like your typical construction worker, probably don't even sound like a construction worker, but I did graduate the apprenticeship program in 2018. I'm here just to talk a little bit about our apprenticeship program, just because I went through it and I think it's something everyone should be aware of. Before getting into the program, I was in a really bad place. I wasn't able to support myself, and I probably wasn't going to make it to 24. So the only way I seen possible for me to save myself was to get a new job. Somebody told me about the union. So I applied. I didn't get in right away, but I, kept trying. I was persistent and I eventually got in. Completely changed my life. I was able to afford a house. Going to work every day was, a joy, really. Being in construction, you probably don't hear that very much either, but it was different every day. It was something that I enjoyed doing. I seen completions. I get to, drive by things and point out to my kids now that, those lights are on because mommy did that. But I would just like to offer, a tour of our training center. Anyone that's willing to come to our training center, I would be delighted to have you guys to show you where it is that we're training people that apply to the apprenticeship program. In 2 short weeks, it's going to be Women in Construction Week, which obviously is very special to me. I try my hardest to get as many women into the program that I can. So I look forward to emailing you guys later, inviting you to tour our training center. Thank you.
Thank you very much. We'll look forward to receiving that. Is there anybody else in the audience? Anybody online?
We have a hand raised from Roy Wolford.
Good evening, and congratulations to the previous speaker. Terrific. I wanted to address a budget bill, the budget trailer bill, AB 205, from June 30th, 2022, signed into law by Gavin Newsom. The purpose of the bill was to enact changes to the electric utility rates and billing. One item added a fixed line item fee for infrastructure, to finance infrastructure, much like the Marin Municipal Water District does. The second item was a requirement for the fixed billing portion to have at least 3 tiers of billing structured into the billing rates based on income. In other words, the higher the customer's income, the higher the fixed billing amount. The tiered billing was to be based on equity principles. In other words, the current billing is unfair because customers with lower incomes pay a higher percentage of their income for electricity than people with higher incomes who pay lower percentage of their income for electricity. It's just pure simple math. Billing all customers at the same rate for electricity is unfair. It's not equitable. Equality is not fair, they say. I contacted Assemblymember Damon Conley's office, and his staff was very helpful in providing information about the proposed billing changes. The Assembly member was not in favor of the tiered billing. The equity billing was one of a number of continuing attacks on people who purchase solar panels and systems for their homes and businesses. The equity proponents argued that the solar owners received credit for electricity generated and placed back on the grid was causing electricity rates to soar and making low-income customers pay for the solar panels. This rationale, of course, is delusional nonsense. Those who did purchase solar panels and systems forward paid their utility bills 8 to 13 years in advance. In other words, this was the payback period. The latest information I gathered on electric billing rates from the CPUC, that's California Public Utilities Commission, proceedings number R.22-07-005, dated May 9th, 2024. In that document, the equity billing was not implemented. There is to be a fixed rate component on the utility bill that applies to infrastructure. That rate is $24.15 per month. There are billing rate changes for electrical usage and other utility information reported on that document. The implementation date for the billing change was not provided. For some insight, the highest proposed monthly fixed rate was $73.50 per month. That would have worked out to $882 per year. So just to repeat, the proceedings number is R-22-07-005. You can find it on the internet.
Thanks so much, Roy. We appreciate your time. Okay, coming up next. Oh, I see it right here. We would like to invite Sarah DeAlexander, who is applying for an appointment to serve the remainder of a vacant term on the Client Action Committee. And Sarah has received some questions ahead of time. Hi, Sarah. Welcome.
Oh, thank you.
We're not as scary as we seem in this big building, you know.
Oh, no, y'all seem wonderful. Thank
Oh,
you.
good.
Yeah.
I'm glad to hear that. So, Sarah, you have 1 minute for an opening statement, an opportunity to share a little about yourself, your family, your involvement with any organizations in town. So whenever you're ready, go ahead.
Right, excellent. Well, thank you all for having me. My name is Sarah DeAlexander, and I'm new to California in the Bay Area. I've been in California for about a year now, and I'm a new resident to Corte Madera, and I've been here for about 3 months. And we relocated here from Washington, D.C. for my husband's work, but not before we took a little professional break to travel the world. Before that, I have a professional background of working in higher education. I worked in the sustainability office at George Mason University and did community engagement work at the University of Maryland. I have a master's degree, an MBA. I have a bachelor's in environmental studies and biology, am LEED Green Associate Certified. And I see these backgrounds I have, these skills, and would really like to contribute them to the town and with the Climate Action Planning Committee.
Thank you very much. So why are you interested in serving on the Climate Action Committee, and what priorities or objectives would you hope to advance in your work here?
I've always been a civically minded individual, I think. After university, I spent a year with AmeriCorps and traveled around the world and worked with different nonprofit organizations. And when I lived in the city of College Park in Maryland, I was a committee of their Committee for a Better Environment, as well as an active member of the Rotary Club there, and on the board for Girls Excelling in Math and Science. And I found it so rewarding to really get to know the community that I'm a part of and be able to use the skills and knowledge I have to be able to give back for causes that I'm passionate about. And I really see an opportunity for me to be able to bring what I do know forward to the committee and really be able to help work towards achieving the goals in the Climate Action Plan. Some of the priorities that I would love to see advanced is working towards more education and outreach for the initiatives that are taking place and for the action items that the committee would like to see done. I also see opportunities for advancing partnerships within the area with other sustainability focused groups to be able to find mutually beneficial partnerships between those organizations and the shared goals that we have. And I bring a lot of project management skills to the table, and I'd love to be able to use them to help advance projects on the ground for the committee and for the town.
Very good. I think you've already answered some of the following questions, but I will ask them again anyway. What qualities would you bring to the committee, including your experience and knowledge related to climate change and or community outreach?
Yeah, when within my last job, I worked at George Mason University in their sustainability office, and I was the sustainability program manager for a grant that they had. And this was a funding opportunity that anyone in the campus community could utilize to help advance the university's sustainability focused goals. And through this position that I had the opportunity to work on 52 different initiatives, from tree plantings to composting pilots to water bottle refill station installations to research projects with professors and solar panel installations, and really got to know hands-on what it takes to implement sustainability projects, but also the power that's there when you're able to provide resources to a community and be able to empower them to implement their own solutions with support. And that's something that I'd love to be able to help bring to the committee in terms of a vision. Before that, I worked at the University of Maryland in their community engagement department. And in that role, I really built bridges between the university and the surrounding community. Within that role, and in doing so, I led an annual volunteer initiative that brought close to 1,000 volunteers together across a dozen different projects in the city to help bring work to environmentally focused projects. And this gave me so much experience in building those partnerships, leveraging different stakeholders in terms of working towards mutual goals, and being able to empower people through that process of bringing people together, and what can be done when people are mobilized and passionate about something.
Okay, thank you. I can go on to the next question if that's
Sure.
okay.
Yeah.
So I saw on your application that you have attended a Climate Action Committee meeting, and I'm just wondering, what do you think of what's going on now? What did you see happening, and what makes you want to get involved with that?
Yeah, absolutely. I've been reviewing the Climate Action Plan from the committee, as well as the 2024 work plan and the draft 2025 work plan, and really see a targeted approach in terms of looking at big focus areas in sustainability that really focus impact and emissions, including energy usage and transportation, water conservation, reducing waste, and really emphasizing our natural environment as a tool for resiliency and sequestration. And I see a lot of work being done from the committee, an impressive amount of things that they're taking on. And I think there's also opportunities to be able to extend the work that they're doing through different mechanisms of outreach, to be able to really engage the greater community in the work. I really see a big passion for sustainability in the Bay Area, and in particular in this kind of northern part of the city. And I think there's a lot that can be done through education to the residents, and building partnerships with local organizations and with other sustainability focused groups to really kind of build momentum with the goals that these different organizations have for sustainability and be able to achieve them together in benefit of the town.
Very good. And our last question, it's not just a yes or no. If you could describe your own strengths and weaknesses in terms of being on a committee and dealing with all of the situations and decision-making in a public setting, with a note about what you would do to reconcile your personal opinions should they conflict with the policies and regulations established by the town.
Thank you. I bring strengths to a committee in terms of that I'm a very strategic thinker when it comes to implementing action items within a community or group. I really focus on making sure that those initiatives are in alignment with the greater goals and mission of the organization. I'm highly organized and able to manage multiple priorities at the same time, which is often needed from a small and mighty team working on these grand challenges. I also have a lot of experience engaging with the community, speaking publicly, and being able to educate people on complex topics, but be able to bring it to a level that's accessible and exciting for people who aren't as familiar with sustainability, for example. I think a weakness I have is that I am brand new to the community here, and I do recognize that I don't have as robust of knowledge of the town's history, of the local dynamics, of the unique challenges and opportunities that are here. I think that can help bring a new perspective to the committee, but I also recognize that it's important for me to be able to learn from members of the committee who have been residents for a long time and from local organizations, and to really build that knowledge. And I think a great way to do that is by serving on the committee. A way for me to be able to kind of balance decision-making and to do so in a way without implementing my own biases. Something that I do is I really take a data-driven approach to really be able to compare things that I'm looking at with the strategies of the plans, of the climate action plan, for example, and look at best practices around a certain topic and engage different stakeholders and get their insights. And this really helps me pull back from my own perspectives on a topic and really get a bigger picture to be able to make a good decision.
Thank you for your responses. There's a commitment question that follows, and it's quite long, so I'll read it quickly. The Climate Action Committee meets the third Wednesday of each month from 4:30 to 6 p.m. Committee members are required to attend in person and are expected to read the agenda package typically posted the Friday prior to the meeting and come prepared to discuss agenda items. Optionally, committee members may take on research and/or outreach tasks to advance the committee's goals outside of meeting times. Concerning these expectations, do you feel you are able to commit to a one-year term on the Climate Action Committee?
Yes, I do.
Very good. And you have 1 minute to make a closing statement.
I really appreciate everyone's time, and I have the sustainability knowledge and the project management experience and the experience in community engagement and working with diverse community members and moving towards a common goal that I think would really benefit the committee. And I really appreciate their consideration.
Okay, thank you very much. So does anyone have any follow-up questions for Sarah? And is there any public comment on Sarah's application? Oh, Zoom?
Mayor Ravazzi, I just wanted to add one quick correction that the vacancy is for a term that is currently vacant that's due to expire on June 30th, 2026. That was an error on my end on the, yes.
So
basically,
can
yeah.
you make the same commitment for a year and a half?
I can, yes.
Okay, very good. Thank you for that clarification, Lorena. So are there any hands raised online from anyone who would like to?
We do not have any hands raised online or received emailed public comment for this interview.
Okay, comments from the council, from our climate action instigator?
Sure. I would just say, Sarah, welcome to Corte Madera. We are thrilled to have you in our community. And I just wanted to say thank you for, coming into town already, raring and ready to go, getting involved and helping, have a positive impact. It's inspiring and refreshing to see people like you who just want to get involved and do good in their community. So thank you so much for stepping up.
Thank you so much.
Anything down here?
I just also want to thank you for stepping forward. I think that public service is just, I wish everyone took a minute or a year or whatever to do it, because I think it is really, really valuable. So I appreciate your stepping forward.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
Jim?
I was gonna find out if I could make a motion.
I think you could make a motion.
I'd like to,
Oh, I'm sorry, Fred would like to say something.
Yeah, I just also want to thank you forward. And you bring a lot of value and a lot of wealth and knowledge, not just locally, but because of where you worked before and your background, your education. So I think you're going to be a great addition. The other thing I think that really tops it off is that you're very passionate when you speak about the topic. So you're smiling, you're just glowing. So I think it's great. And you're going to be a great addition. Thank you.
So kind. Thank you.
And we'll hear a motion from Jim.
I'd like to move that we appoint Sarah D'Alexander to the Climate Action Committee.
Second.
Councilmember Andrews,
Yes.
Councilmember Beckman,
Yes.
Councilmember Casissa.
Yes.
Vice Mayor Thomas,
Yes.
Mayor Ravazio.
Yes.
Thank you. The motion
An
carries.
enthusiastic yes. Sarah, thank
you
you
all.
so much for coming in. Can I just ask one last question? Do you live in either a wildfire zone or a flood zone?
Yes, I live at Belmont Tam. It is a flood zone
Okay.
area.
Well, oh, you're at Belmont Tam.
Yes.
Well, welcome.
Oh, thank you.
Welcome. Thanks very much.
Thank you.
Okay. Look forward to, yes, as we can tell you will be. My only question was, is she overqualified? I don't know. Thank you. Okay, moving on to our presentation, just in time for a little climate action from Ruben Martin, our wonderful fire chief, who's going to talk to us about the wildfire hazard mitigation program. Welcome, Ruben.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, members of the council. Ruben Martin, Fire Chief with the Central Marin Fire Authority and your local fire chief. We're here today as just kind of an update to a lot of our community members and our newer council members that are on the council this year to kind of bring you up to speed of what the town has been doing as a whole, along with the collaboration of the Central Marin Fire Authority on what we've been doing to try to reduce the wildfire hazards and the risks that are here within our community. As many of you may recall, prior to the 2017 year, fire departments weren't really designed and or created for wildfire hazard mitigation inspections, home inspections, wildfire fuels reduction. However, all that changed with the North Bay fires that we saw that came through the wine country in 2017. There was two driving documents that came out of that. One was the Marin County Civil Grand Jury report, and then another report that was commissioned by the Board of Supervisors, which was lessons learned of the 2017 fires. And those two reports were designed to try to look at what are we doing within the county as a whole to try to reduce or prevent something that happened in the North Bay to our neighbors of the north happening here locally. And then also look at which one agency is responsible and or charged for managing fuels mitigation, notifications, evacuations, and so forth. What we quickly found out, it was a multitude of different agencies that were responsible for all of these programs. So with those documents that came forward, it actually, I guess, solidified the partnership between a lot of our cities and towns, public works departments, law enforcement and fire agencies to come together along with our citizens to try to strategize to how we can reduce the risk. With that, we brought forward an initiative in 2020 countywide, which was Measure C, which created the Marin Wildfire Prevention Authority. which was at the time a 10 cents per square footage of residential living space that generated anywhere between 20 and $21 million. That was then designed for a multitude of different initiatives, which included vegetation management, wildfire detection, which is cameras, AI, you name it, everything that's out there. Grants where we can now do some direct home assistance to our homeowners, public education, evacuation plans and drills, defensible space, home hardening evaluations, and local prevention efforts. With that, we broke everything down into how is it going to be funded? And so it was funded into three major buckets, which is broken into core projects, local projects, and defensible space. So when you think about core projects, it is everything that can benefit the entire county as a whole: fire prevention, wildfire mitigation, notification systems, traffic studies, and so forth. That's kind of taken off the top of the 21 million. Then it's broken down into the three buckets: core projects, local, and defensible space. Your core projects are basically designed for what projects benefit the entire core region. So the county, when the MWPA was broken or created, was broken down into 5 manageable areas, which is Novato, San Rafael, West Marin, Southern Marin, and then the central zone, which is all the small towns and municipalities from Whites Hill all along Francis Drake to the Bay Area here in the Richardson Bay Bridge. So that, which includes us. And so with Corte Madera and Larkspur, Central Marin is your representatives on that MWPA board. With that, 60% of the funds that are collected within our entire zone collectively is then utilized to go back into projects that benefit every community within our zone, from Fairfax all the way to here. That's where we try to come together and try to find projects that benefit everyone, where we can stretch the limited funds that we have to maximize the amount of work that we're doing. A perfect example of that was evacuation route clearing. So you see, as we're clearing up the roadways, trying to take the vegetation off some of our tighter hillside communities. The other big one that people have been may have heard about is the Greater Ross Valley Shaded Fuel Break, which is a 38-mile, 150 to 250 foot fuel reduction zone behind every home, from, if you can imagine, a beltway that connects Ring Mountain all the way around and encompasses all of our communities all the way out to Whites Hill, and then encompasses all the way back to Fairfax through the Greenbrae Hills, and then reconnects back into projects that are occurring within San Rafael. So with that 38 miles, we've completed approximately 70% of that fuel break, which now big portions of it are now going into the maintenance phase. Just think about the big heavy lift is, as you rip the Band-Aid off, as we say, is the hard work. And then after that is coming back and repainting it, similar to maintaining the Golden Gate Bridge. You've got to redo it and maintain it. So that's your core projects. Your local mitigation dollars, which is about 20% of the funds that are collected here within Corte Madera and Larkspur, are then put back into the community for local mitigation, direct homeowner assistance. We found that we tend to get most amount of production with those dollars is by direct homeowner assistance and or voluntary abatements. So for example, we find we'll go out and do an inspection through our defensible space inspection program, and we'll determine that there's a home that's in a violation of the certain rule or regulation within our defensible space laws. We'll work with the homeowner on trying to get that cleared. However, there are certain times where we understand that homeowners can't do it. A lot of times it may be because of functional needs, income, there's a limited number of resources or on fixed income. And so as long as they allow us to come in onto their property voluntarily, we can then go ahead and abate it. And typically that goes a lot faster and is a lot or a lot more cost effective than, say, a court ordered abatement, which takes anywhere from 8 to 10 months for one property. And then the other bucket of money is our defensible space program, which is where we go out and evaluate all of our homes within our hillside communities. We've been doing that since 2020. And then this year, we're actually going to focus on our homes that are located down into the flats because they're also tax-paying members of the Measure C. And we figured that we were going to concentrate our first couple of years on our high target hazard areas. And then every 4 to 5 years, kind of circle back to our homes on the flats, just as a reminder that, fire knows no boundaries. And yes, fire can come off the hillside and impact some of the homes that are down on the flats that you traditionally wouldn't see in a wildland interface fire. Next slide, please. Here's kind of a graph that kind of shows all the dollars that have come into the jurisdiction and how we've allocated them. One program that I forgot to mention earlier was the Measure F funding that is through your disaster preparedness funding that's collected through your sales tax. We manage about 150,000 of it annually that is then utilized to augment our local projects within the town of Corte Madera. And as you can see, that's on the bar up there. And so it breaks it down into your defensible space. It's about 440,000 that comes back into both Larkspur and Corte Madera. So about 220 within each jurisdiction. And then the same is equal for your local mitigation. So about 220,000 of local dollars come back to the community here in Corte Madera. Where we're very fortunate is both the town of Corte Madera and the city of Larkspur front load our budget with the total amount of approximately 800,000 that then goes towards both defensible space and mitigation. So that way we don't really look at, are we spending every single penny and dollar here and every single penny dollar across the street, because we've both realized that the philosophy is that fire knows no boundary, and a fire that starts in Larkspur and or Corte Madera is going to gravely impact one another. And so even though we keep a real good record and track of it, both managers have given us the philosophy of helping Larkspur out helps Corte Madera out, vice versa. And so it makes our projects run seamlessly, because a lot of these, both core projects and local projects, it's hard to discern, especially with contractors, of where these town and city boundaries are. And then, of course, the Greater Ross Valley Shaded Fuel Break. Last year was about 900,000 that went into it. And then you may ask yourself, how are we putting 900,000 into that fuel break when we're only generating about 800,000 annually? And that's because part of it is the core funding that I mentioned earlier that comes from the entire general area. Plus, we had received a 5-year, $5 million grant through CAL FIRE at the early onset of the program, which helps out tremendously. So if you look at of all the programs and projects, which was about 92 independent projects that Todd Lando, our battalion chief hazard mitigation specialist, manages, is approximately about $2.2 million that we spent over the 23-24 year. Next slide, please. I'm going to talk a little bit about our defensible space program. Next slide, please. So many of you may have already received this little flyer or door hanger on your door if you've already received a home evaluation from one of our inspectors. The way we're able to accomplish all these inspections, I believe last year we did a total of 17,000 inspections countywide. So if you think about it, with defensible space programs, the way the MWPA was designed is you can either go at it alone as an individual agency, or you can contract back with, the goal was MWPA. However, where we found was Marin County Fire Department has a great hiring pool for seasonal firefighters. And so we tapped into that hiring pool, joined forces with Marin County Fire Department, the Ross Valley Fire Department, Kentfield Fire Protection District, ourselves, Southern Marin Fire Protection District. And then this upcoming year will be San Rafael Fire. So we pool all of our defensible space dollars together. We hire approximately 30 inspectors and then just have them blitz the entire area. And so you'd be surprised on how many inspections they can get done, having that many people out there. So they can come through your neighborhood and get done in a week. And then we reschedule them based on the findings within the report, which homes need to come back for defensible space inspections. So next slide, please, right now. So here, it'll show you in 2024, there was approximately 1,800 defensible space inspections that were conducted within our jurisdiction, with approximately 15,000 violations identified, with just shy of 1,200 high priority violations. And of those 1,200 high priority violations, we've identified 48 residences that received a voluntary abatement. So we, for whatever reason, whether it was a 50-50 partnership or 100% covered through Measure C funding, we identified these individuals, had them sign a release, and then allowed us to go in there with independent contractors, clear up the property, and we're gone in about 2 days. And then as we did up there with our, what we're calling is the Marin Defensible Space Alliance. You may hear that name out there. It's the coalition of all these agencies that have come together. Did, as I mentioned, about 19,000 inspections. Next slide. And here's kind of more in depth of inspections here for Central Marin. So here it talks about Christmas Tree Hill and adjacent neighborhoods. So think of Chapman Park, Christmas Tree Hill, Marina Vista, going into Madrone Canyon. There was approximately 1,500 inspections done with about 1,000 properties, with 400 or so receiving re-inspections. And what they ended up doing this year with the reinspection program is our Fire Aside, which is the mobile application and software that they're using, teamed up with an analytics or a fire behavior analyst kind of company that they now are merging the two softwares. So you can now look at where your hazards are within your property, do a fire behavior analysis, and try to figure out, okay, which properties are the most at risk based on the hazards that were located. And so Todd and his group beta tested it and then went out and are doing the re-inspections of all of those properties based on the analytics that were brought back to him with the data of the Fire Aside. And then here it just kind of shows the resident engagement. Of course, if you can think about defensible space inspections, we can only gain access to a person's property with permission. We use what's called curtilage. So if your post office or your UPS person can come in and deliver a package, and if we can see whatever we can see as we walk through your front door to knock, that's through an unlocked gate, then we can comment on anything that's out in open view. However, we're not going around to people's backyards. We're not flying drones. We're not doing Google searches for defensible space inspections. Hence why you'll see on this pie here on why some of these inspections were street only, because there was no one at home. And so we would try then again through the reinspection, try to see, can we capture these individuals through the second and third time through a neighborhood? What we've noticed is that our resident engagements with violation corrections increases with re-inspections. A little anecdote was one of our neighbors on next door posted, "Don't worry about it. The fire department never comes back for a re-inspection. Don't worry about your report. Just throw it in the can." Well, that individual ended up getting a re-inspection about 20 minutes later, ironically. So everyone gets a re-inspection that where we feel that it's important. Next slide, please. Let's see. And here goes another slide about the inspections that we did year by year. And then the violations that were found per property. You can go on to the next slide. And then wildfire vegetation management. So we start looking at, well, when I talk about vegetation management, we look at our trees, our shrubs, our ornamental vegetation, our curb appeal. Being in our line of work, we look at that as fuel that can burn. And so what we try to do is one of the few things that we do have control over within our built environment is what our fuels look like. Thinning fuels out, removal of fuels, changing what that landscape looks like. So then now if a fire does come through, there's less and less stuff for it to actually ignite. So here's an example of what we did over this last fiscal year. We treated 141 total acres, which was equivalent to about 4,400 cubic yards. And when you think about a cubic yard, it's a 3 by 3 by 3 foot high. It's a giant cube, which is equivalent to about 6.6 miles of roadway, with 1.68 million in funding. And that comes from our local and hazard or our core funding through our evacuation routes and or through any kind of ground funding that we can get. And some of the things that our residents need to be mindful of is that all the vegetation that we're removing all originates from private property. So everything that we see on the roadsides, everything that we're clearing typically is coming off of private property with the exception of the Greater Ross Valley Shaded Field Break, which is primarily all done through open space and or water district lands. Next slide, please. Here's a few examples of some of the work that we've done. This is at the very top of Christmas Tree Hill Summit, right before you get to the Corte Madera Ridge Fire Road. The picture on the left with our vehicle is pre-treatment, and then on the right side is post-evacuation route treatments. So what we're trying to do is not necessarily remove all of the trees that are there. What we're trying to do is remove and or reduce some of those light flashy fuels that we call a receptive fuel bed. That then, if you can think about an ember as a flying matchstick, if that match lands somewhere, can we prevent it from igniting? Or if it does ignite, can we keep that fire small? And as you can see on the left, the grasses are much higher with all the French broom that's up there that then would elevate the flame lengths, which will then get it up into the tree line that then exacerbates the problem, which will then cause an ember cast down into either Mill Valley or into our communities into on Lower Christmas Tree Hill. Next slide. Here's another angle of that same hillside. This was key because what people don't understand is that we have a water tank up there that we're also trying to protect because that's a crucial water source for us, not only in a vegetation fire, but during a structure fire. There's communication infrastructure up there, cell towers at the very top up there that not only vital to us, but everyone in the community so they can receive their emergency alerts. There's a few homes down that driveway that this now improves their evacuation route coming off of this hillside. Next slide, please. And then here's another example, left and right. This is over in the Larkspur area, Citron Bowl. On the left-hand side, this area has been somewhat of a demonstration treatment area. We've tried a lot of different things from goat grazing to manual removal and chipping of the acacia to sporadically treating each stub with pesticides per the open space, whatever they're allowed to use. I'm trying to figure out what we can do as treatment to try to keep the acacia and broom from coming back. And it's a challenge. It's a critical area here when you think about it. Why in Corte Madera are we worried about the Citron Bowl? Well, if we get a fire somewhere in the Citron Bowl area, which is right around Baltimore Canyon, King Mountain Preserve, is you get a fire established there on a north wind, we're going to be evacuating the entire town of Corte Madera.
Wasn't that where they had the Corte Madera fire of 1899?
I'd have to check the date on that, but I know we've had a few come through there. And so this community's had a lot of history of fire. For us is just understanding how we can live with it. You know, fires start. A a lot of times, the only thing we see on the news is these big giant conflagrations, these mega fires that we've seen over the last 5 years. But what we try to remember is we're trying to protect all of us from these 95% of the fires, which are usually less than 5 acres. If we can keep those contained, then hopefully they'll keep them from growing much larger. Next slide, please. And then here's just an outline of the Greater Ross Valley Shaded Fuel Break. Different portions that interconnect the entire community. It is just looks like a big squiggly line up there. But believe it or not, it encompasses the entire built environment of the Greater Ross Valley, which is Corte Madera all the way to Fairfax. It's up there. It's 1,100 acres. We're gaining access to 1,700 parcels because some of these areas are inaccessible unless we have to go through people's yards. And we've had great success with a lot of our neighbors gaining us access because they understand the importance of it. Next slide. And then here's a portion of the Christmas Tree Hill. So at the very top of Christmas Tree Hill, it's about 1.3 miles. 46 acres, total of 36 parcels. We started this in 24, 25, or last year. We should be hopefully finishing this portion of it this year. We're very fortunate that Todd Lando has been spearheading the entire project and was able to secure the CAL FIRE grants. So we're kind of prioritizing our piece of dirt, so to speak. Next slide. The other portion, resident grant programs. So as you can see, there's a limited number of funds that come back to the community. When you think about, for us, it's about 800,000 a year, which is a drop in the bucket when you think about the expense of labor, the expense of contractors, the expense of removal of all this fuel. And then part of that within all the expense of that within the MWPA core function, they take a portion of the funds that are allocated to the entire county and they created a resident grant program. And what they do is with that resident grant program, it's about 800,000 annually. And believe it or not, it gets used up fairly quickly. And it's first come, first serve. And we've tied them into your defensible home assessments. So if someone wanted a home assessment or a home assessment grant, whether it's for defensible space or home hardening, they would have had to receive a defensible space home inspection and hardening, and with a report that outlines it's identified that I need vents and I want to replace my vents and I'm applying for a grant for vents, or I'm removing vegetation and I'm applying for a matching grant for vegetation. Last year, there was a total of over 1,000 grants that were awarded. The way we utilize our local funding is through identified through the Defensible Space Program. We've identified projects or properties that need abatement, and then we'll go ahead and work with the property owners on trying to get direct assistance that way versus a grant program. Next slide. And here's this slide kind of shows the steps for our community members who are interested in receiving an MWPA grant. So they can access the grant through MWPA website, apply for the grant. MWPA staff will review it. They will see if any of the risk mitigation work was done, i.e. Fuels reduction or home hardening, and then they will reimburse you whatever the grant amount is awarded. And that's pretty much the program there. I know this is a very big one. They every year are asking local jurisdictions if we would be willing to give back some of our Measure C MWPA funds for these local mitigation grants. It's harder and harder for us smaller jurisdictions to do that because we share the entire operating area with several other agencies. For example, the greater core area is, like I mentioned, it's with Marin County Fire Department, Fairfax, San Anselmo, Sleepy Hollow, Kentfield, Corte Madera, and Larkspur. So there's 7 agencies here that share that core funding. For example, San Rafael receives all of their funding to one agency or one city, and so they have more funds available that they can then push back into their grant program. Another example, Southern Moran had passed a wildfire mitigation, not a wildfire, but a fire prevention mitigation tax in 2019 under Measure U. And so now they have Measure U funds and then Measure C funds. And so they can't supplant one allocation of funds over the other. So what they do is they take a lot of their Measure C funds and then give it right back to MWPA for direct assistance grants. And so that's how they generally garner all the funds for their own grant program. Next slide, please. So some of the continued challenges that we have as an agency is the lack of homeowner engagement, to be honest, is we'll go out and do inspections. We will review all of our inspection files because we can see who's opened up their report, what violations have been corrected. And it's surprising to us with everything that's going around, the lack of homeowner engagement or the lack of action taken by our homeowners. For example, there were over 3,100 uncorrected defensible space violations just within our zone. And these are more serious violations. Yes, I get it. Some of the inspectors will go out and say, you've got a jute mat on your doorway. Technically, yeah, it's within zone 0, but do we count that as a major violation? No. And so these are major defensible space violations. The other problem or the challenge that we run across is the enforcement component of it. As I mentioned earlier, to be able to properly enforce or take someone to an abatement, which our agency, I believe, is the most aggressive when it comes to court-ordered abatements. It takes anywhere from 6 to 10 months per property to be able to go down to the Superior Court, get a warrant, and do the whole, jump through all the hoops and staff time to get all that done. We've done a few here in the past through Corte Madera, where we've taken, I believe it was in 2018, we've had a few court-ordered abatements. I've done 3 or 4 in Larkspur, and each of them, the amount of staff time that it takes, it's frustrating. So that's why we offer the voluntary abatements. So we would say, hey, we know that your property needs to get abated. Why isn't the work being done? And if they can tell us it's either because of functional needs, income related, or some other reason why they can't get it done, we're more than happy to help you. This is what you pay the tax for. And most of us know what those homes are within our community. It's typically 1 or 2 homes within the block that it's an eyesore, that everyone calls my office starting in May all the way through October. When are you going to do this? When are you going to do this? So we already have a running list of these repeat offenders, so to speak. And then we go out and say, hey, Mr. or Mrs. X, would you like, it's that time for abatements. Here's your first notice. Here's your second notice. By the time we get to the third notice, it's like, okay, we know you're not going to do it. Is it okay if we come and do it for you? Because it literally takes about half as much in financing to do that. I can take the next slide. And that's it for the presentation. One of the things I did want to touch on that isn't on the presentation is you guys have read and heard about the governor's executive order on Zone 0 and or home hardening and the WUI maps. Basically the executive order has directed CAL FIRE to hurry up and release the maps, which we should have ours released in 2024, which is the updated wildland urban interface or very high fire hazard severity zone maps. They're supposed to be done about every 10 years. The last time they were released was in 2007. So the maps should come out, and that will increase from what I understand is what those very high fire hazard severity zones are. For an example, we have 0 within our community. I've got 1 within the city of Larkspur, and that is at the very deep end at Baltimore Canyon. And it's all based on prior fire history, fuel, activity and so forth in the area. So we, as our local WUI codes and WUI maps are more expansive and more restrictive than what the state recommends, just because we have a lot of local knowledge of how difficult it is going up and down our neighborhoods, and trying to access Christmas Tree Hill, the fuels, the concerns we're going to have of evacuations. So those maps that'll identify the very high fire hazard severity zones will be out on February 24th. And then shortly thereafter, the Board of Forestry and Fire Protection should be issuing their regulations on Zone 0, which is what they're calling the 0 to 5 feet around your structures, of what that's going to look like and what vegetation should and shouldn't be allowed within that zone.
Thank you, Chief Rubin. Thank you so much, Chief Martin, I should say, to be a little more formal. Adam, do you have anything to add to the presentation? Do we have questions from the council? Yes, Jim.
First, sort of a non-observation. Most of the statistics you provided in here was for the Marin County wildfire all the way across the whole county, not just
So I gave you some general numbers of the entire defensible space program, and then I broke it down into what we were doing locally.
and have you published evacuation routes or?
Like pre-designated maps?
Yeah.
Yes, we have pre-designated maps that have been published and they're on the Fire Safe Marin website.
Okay, thanks.
Anything else?
Yeah. Excluding the grant program from the wildfire agency, what is the best way for a Corte Madera resident to get help if they need financial help clearing their property? Should I just call you up and say, hey, I need help?
No, I think well, that's one part of it. The other part of it is trying to figure out what type of help they need.
Yeah.
And, look at, because someone may look at their property and think it's completely a mess. And we look at it and go, yeah, it's not that bad. It's only going to take one day to get it cleaned up. But yeah, they can reach out to us and then we can formulate a plan.
Okay.
I've worked with some property owners where based on funding, we've been able to accomplish a complete plan within a 3 to 4 year period.
Okay.
For example, it's what can you afford year one? What can you afford now the following year? I.e., can you go 15 feet year one, 30 feet the second year, now 60 feet? And so I've worked with property owners that way, depending on what they can and can't absorb financially.
Good enough.
Anybody else? Rosa?
I had a question about, you mentioned the idea of someone having like a jute mat in front of their door and that being a fire hazard. How about the fact that so many of us have mulch?
That's an issue. It's what we recommend is nothing combustible in that first 5 feet. And if it's mulch, it should be some type of rock mulch.
So I'm sorry, 5 feet?
First 5 feet around your house, it should be a rock mulch or some type of compostable mulch where it's more of a dirt mulch versus shredded bark.
So 5 feet from
From
your
either the
front door
wall,
or 5 feet coming toward you?
so 5 feet away from the wall, moving away. So if you can pretty much touch your wall, by the time you get to the other side, it's about 6 feet or so
Mhm.
for most of us. And that's about your 5 feet. And so just think about most of your walkways from your fence line to your home is typically about 4 to 5 feet. Those are your side yard setbacks.
Okay, yeah, I was just wondering because there's a couple of problems with that. The fact that a lot of it washes into the drains, so it's
It
a
is,
problem
yeah.
for flooding, but it's also a problem for fire.
Mhm.
And then can you repeat for me with the shaded fuel break, is that the same distance as 6 feet from the back of the house?
No, so the shaded fuel break, what we're doing is anywhere from, depending on the topography, anywhere from 150 to 200 feet, sometimes 300 feet in certain areas. And what we're doing is removing all the dead and down, so dead material on the ground, invasive species like your French brooms, removing anything that's combustible down low. And then any of your trees, are trying to limb them up 6 to 8 feet up off the ground. So that way, if a fire does come roaring out of the watershed or through park and open space, we're hoping that once it hits that area, there's a lot less fuel for it to consume. So the fire will slow down just long enough to allow firefighters to get in there to suppress it or do suppression activities, and to allow community members an opportunity to get in their vehicles and get out.
This way?
Thank you. Just a couple questions. Chief, thanks so much for the very informative presentation. My questions are both kind of around trying to grapple with whether we should be more aggressive in dealing with what is really a collective action problem and not wanting to balance homeowners' individual rights versus not wanting to allow individual property owners to hold their entire neighborhood at risk. So one thing you mentioned that you guys don't currently do drone inspections and you don't use satellite imagery to sort of look for any defensible space violations. I know that, like, for example, insurance companies will do that, right? Insurance companies will fly a drone over your house and find a speck of moss this big on your roof and cancel your policy, which I think feels really crappy to a lot of us that that's happened to. And my question is just, what's your take on, do we feel that we have sort of the adequate protocols in place right now to be doing enough, or is that, like, for example, is some sort of aerial inspection something that you would want to consider potentially down the road?
Aerial inspections, I'm going to say no,
Okay.
because that then infringes upon your Fourth Amendment rights
Okay.
and then your rights to privacy. So we're not going to do that. The only time we're allowed to fly drones is if it's mission critical and if it's policy about if we're using it for emergency operations only.
It sounds like we do take a much broader view of residents' privacy
We
rights
do.
than your average insurance company does, which I really appreciate.
Yes, and our legal counsel may be able to opine on.
Amy Ackerman, town attorney. The right to privacy is complicated because the question is, do you have a reasonable expectation of privacy in your outdoor space? And there are arguments that you don't. Certainly anything you can see from the street, there's no reasonable expectation of privacy. The law is a little bit young on use of drones. I expect we will see a lot more of it. There is an opinion that came out on police officers' use of drones and whether that drone footage is public record or not. So I do think this is an area that's developing. The fire department could get an administrative warrant to, if there are concerns about a particular property, you can get an administrative warrant to go and inspect property that's not visible from the street. So there are some tools, but the administrative warrant, you have to have some probable cause. So that would be for a particular property, maybe that was really a high risk and really there were some serious concerns. And as to drones, I think we'll learn more shortly about, use of drones. And I would expect there's some reasonable arguments that there aren't expectations of privacy or they need to be balanced with the risk of fire, but more to come, I would think.
That's very helpful. Thank you. And I don't want to sidetrack us on a legal discussion, but I wanted to understand whether you feel like us not doing that is a pain point, and it sounds like that's not the feeling at this time. So that's helpful. Second question, kind of along the same lines. 3,100 major correctable defensible space violations that are not corrected is concerning. Are there tools that you need from the city councils in your jurisdiction, in your service area, to help make some headway on these, or what do we think?
What we need is for our residents to take this problem seriously,
Right.
honestly, and quit kicking the proverbial can down the road and having this concept of it's not going to happen to us. You know, I've worked on Mount Tam where I've had residents tell me, oh, don't worry about it. Fires never happen here, which I'm like, okay, just be warned that you've been advised. And so what I would ask, I think we're getting full support of the councils on both sides. We see what the issues are. Is now I implore us as community members, let's get together and let's get to work. You know, we really need to start, I hate to say it, but taking care of our properties and trying to identify what these hazards are if we really are serious about not losing the insurance market within the state of California.
Just one thing to add is, I don't know if you use administrative citation procedures and issue the fines.
No, we do not.
There's-
It's just we don't have the staff.
Yeah, a number of fire districts use that, and that can be helpful to grab a residence.
I think in the
That's it.
county, the only one that's using it is the city of San Rafael, and I'm not sure how successful it's been.
Interesting. Okay. Well, I'll save my thought for the
Yeah.
comments. Thank you, Chief.
Yeah, can you just talk about the elephant in the room, which is insurance?
Yes.
And I know MWPA is doing a lot of work. I know they've been in touch with state legislative and all that, but I know a lot of people get worried, high fire area, all that, and are they going to cancel my insurance? What happens?
Yeah, I think the insurance market is very volatile right now. We're not only just seeing it at the homeowner insurance level, we're seeing it at our insurance pool levels for cities and governments. Just the volatility out there with these amount of losses. I think they were talking about the California Fair Plan almost going empty, if it already did with the fires in Southern California. I think the insurance market are the only ones that really have teeth, to put it bluntly, because they're the ones that hold that carrot over you, that if you want to keep your homeowner's policy, guess what? You're going to have to remove that tree or that shrub that the fire department may not consider a significant hazard, but because they're the ones investing into our properties, they're the ones that hold the carrot. And for us to be able to keep the insurance market within California is for all of us to do our part.
Thanks. And then years ago, maybe 4 or 5 years, plus or minus pre-COVID, we used to do chipper days. I think we had a program where we were sending dumpsters into neighborhoods. It seems like that, and we were sending crews around town. And I think I was looking at one of the stats from that, again, 5 or 6 years ago. It was something like 11,000 cubic yards of vegetation management. It's more than almost like 2.5 times what's in the report here. It's almost like, it seems like we need to go back to that, and that may encourage some of these people, if there's a dumpster in their neighborhood, to go, hey, we're providing you the assistance to get rid of the stuff you need to get rid of.
So right now we pivoted in 2021 because in 2020, at the beginning of the pandemic, we were still doing the Take It to the Streets program with Marla Orth. And she was the one putting these 20 and 40-foot debris dumpsters and bringing the chipper program and so forth. That's when the town was pretty much shut down. So it allowed us to do a lot of work. In 2021, we pivoted over to MWPA's chipper program because we looked like we were starting to basically both of us doing the exact same thing. What they were doing, we're actually doing pickups at your driveway. So you can sign up ahead of time and they would coincide with your defensible space inspection. So they come by, do your evaluation of your home, gives you a few weeks to do the work. They had to do a whole week here in town picking up debris. And I think they do 2 or 3 pickups throughout the year, one early on, one mid-season, one late season. And if there's certain neighborhoods that are wanting that service more and more, we as local fire department can provide that service through our third-party local contractors, which we've done that up off of Meadowcrest. That entire community got together and did a work party and had more more fuel than what the chipper day can handle. And so we actually just assigned one whole day with a contracted crew up there for them.
Do you think we need to repivot back? I know MWP, I sat on that board for a couple of years,
Yeah.
and I know they do a lot of good work. It just seems like with all these people that aren't like that program, I don't know how much education there is on that program that, hey, we can do this for you. It just seems like when you take a dumpster and put in somebody's neighborhood and publicize, bring your waste here, it seems like they're more encouraged to do it.
Yeah, we'll have to take a look at it. Right now, we feel that we're very successful with the MWPA program. Just because you think about local chipper days, the amount of local staff time that it takes.
All right, thanks. I'll have a few comments too after.
Okay, so that was my question too, was about what happened to chipper days, because I do think they can be awareness building for people like, oh, we get something free if we do it today.
Yeah,
So-
typically in the past when it was Corte Madera standalone and when the early days of Central Marin Fire, I think we used to do one chipper weekend a year,
Oh.
which was 3 days. Here they come by 15 days.
Awesome.
So,
Maybe it's
and
just
they'll
an
pick it up in your
awareness,
house.
awareness and outreach.
And we've
then.
also had homeowners that when we're out doing roadside clearance will come out and say, hey, I've got this material to chip. Can you take it with you? And we'll say, bring it on down. And so if they have it, we'll haul it.
Okay, great. So are there any questions from the public or comments? Oh, I'm sorry, Jane.
What can we do, given the age of our town and the fact that one of our neighborhoods was laid out state-of-the-art urban planning, 1880s, and another one was laid out state-of-the-art 1910. How can we help you guys have clear access to the roadways? Is there anything we need to start thinking about doing, even if it's going to take 20 years to fully implement?
And I wish we could start from scratch. I guess Amy and I could start from scratch and with an empty canvas and can lay it out perfectly. And you'd have this wonderful, beautiful, state-of-the-art, modern-day roadways. However, I think that takes away from the quaintness of this community and becomes everywhere else. I think for us is just trying to strategize with our public works directors, with our town manager on what are best practices for getting our community members out of the hillside when they need to be. And we've struggled back and forth on, do we not allow parking in certain areas? And then the challenges become if we start saying, yeah, we've got an aging infrastructure, but yet we also have an aging community. And our aging community still lives in the hillsides. And what happens if we tell them to park their only car that they have down at the bottom of the hill?
Yeah.
And so you see that conundrum of, okay, of evacuations, non-evacuations, parking, no parking. It's a challenge. It's, right now we're working with the public works director to try to reevaluate. We may have to remove 1 or 2 parking boxes that are strategically located that assist with turning. And it's just going to take a study amongst, I think, different department heads.
And if I may, I think we also, as part of the Lower Christmas Tree Hill undergrounding evac plan sewer project, we're starting to have those conversations with the fire chief, public works director, also around just, are there policies around red flag days, around those times where we know those are coming? Can you plan for those? Can you actually implement some policies that, and that would be maybe a good project to sort of start to have those conversations around, because it is at the bottom of the hill. And we are engaging our residents there already. So
could be, if we're going to offer any sort of planning concessions or discounts, say, if you put in more than required parking so that you're off the street, would that help you?
I think it would all come down to what's within state law and what's allowed within our planning director. I know your planning director, Ms. Lyle, and I and our prevention staff work closely together anytime a project comes through to try to figure out, are there any hazards or any mitigation efforts that we need to take a look at?
Yeah, well, no, I'm not saying we'll force them. We'll sit there and say, hey, we'll give you a discount on planning fees if you add more parking space than legally required.
I think that is outside my lanes.
Okay.
Probably outside all our lanes for right now. Okay, so are there any questions from the public regarding Chief Martin's presentation? Help yourself to the microphone.
Thank you for making this opportunity, council members. And I'm Dan Kenny from 19 Fairview Avenue in the Hidden Valley NRG. And I'm going to read this statement because I think it'll save some time if I don't ramble. I want to make the council aware of what I and a number of the other Hidden Valley neighbors feel is critical wildfire mitigation issue for the 82 homes in Hidden Valley neighborhood. We feel that the Quarry Meadows HOA conservation property located between Quarry Meadows condominiums and Fairview Avenue is a wildfire risk. This area is very steep, has significant undergrowth, and has fire-prone plants such as Scotch broom. It is loaded with fuel. Numerous fire officials have said that the wildfire risk to Hidden Valley is from the hot, dry Diablo winds coming from the northeast, which means they're going to be coming over this particular conservation woodland to get to Hidden Valley neighborhood. If fire starts in Quarry Meadows conservation property, Diablo winds will drive fire into Hidden Valley. We asked the town council and the Central Fire Marin Department make fire mitigation in the Quarry Meadows HOA conservation priority a priority. That's it.
Thank you very
Any
much.
questions of me?
Well, we'll let staff have an opportunity to address your questions at the end of our comment period.
Thank you.
Welcome. Anybody else?
Thank you for the opportunity to ask a few questions. I'm Lucinda Smith. I live up in the Hidden Valley Neighborhood Response Group area, one of those 82 homes. Very narrow street. Has there been any thought, and there was a little bit of discussion, I think, about this. I think Berkeley is a leader in prohibiting or limiting parking on narrow streets. I think Adam brought up red fire days. I mean, maybe on red fire days or potentially close to eliminating, because I know that the narrow streets are, it's difficult at best to get a fire engine around, but you're going to have people trying to, if you get to the evacuation warning, trying to get on those streets and get out of the area. So I don't know how a fire engine can maneuver with many vehicles trying to get down the hill. The other thing that I was wondering is insurance related. And I just have to assume that we don't share and they don't share their aerial information. Now, we don't apparently have it, but if the insurance company comes and asks the town or the fire, Central Marin Fire, would that fall under privacy that we would not release that information? I don't want us to be thinking one thing with the insurance companies and another thing with regard to sharing information either way. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any other comments from the public here? And if not, is there anybody online?
I will add that we did receive an emailed public comment from Patty Stolier earlier today that was shared with council and added to the website. And right now we have a hand raised from Roy Wolford.
Go ahead, Roy.
Hey, good evening again. Chief Martin, I have a number of questions. Are there any neighboring municipalities that are not aggressively removing the combustible vegetation and materials at this point?
I believe every municipality within the county is doing that.
Great. What percentage of hazards issues identified remain to be addressed in order to achieve an excellent fire hardened environment?
So rather than have the conversation here, if you could just give us your questions and then, as I said earlier, we'll address them all at
Okay,
once.
so you'll write them down, and because a lot of times this happens and half the questions don't get answered. So that's fine. I'll do that. The Marin Municipal Water District is pressuring to remove lawns, i.e. green grass, and replace them with native plants and low water vegetation, in addition to mulch that's already been mentioned. The green grass doesn't burn. It's very defensible. You can have it right up against the house if you maintain it green. The low water vegetation and the mulch burns. How do you square that issue with the Marin Municipal Water District trying to conserve water, but at the same time having an excellent defensible fire space material? And then could you address your thoughts on house vent screens and then also wood fences relative to fire hardening and combustible materials?
Thank you. Is that all, Roy?
Yeah, I think that's 4 questions. So.
Okay, thanks very much. Is there anyone else online?
No, no additional hands raised for this item.
Okay, so Ruben, did you take good notes?
Hopefully I did. If not, I will ask for a clarification. Mr. Kenny, we had talked about Quarry Meadows HOA. Some of the challenges that we run across is that it's private property and then trying to gain access onto private property to do work. And so I was trying to get that cooperation with the HOA to be able to do that. Yes, we've identified that as one of our priorities, just because we understand one is the steepness of the hillside where fire can probably traverse the hillside fairly quickly. Homes right along the ridge line, and then homes that are located both in the Mill Valley, Scotts Valley area, and then down into the Hidden Valley area. So what we're doing is evaluating, one, can we get on access to the property? And then two, what type and what extent of vegetation can be removed just because of the steepness of the hillside. The last thing we want to do is remove one hazard and create another problem. Because the last thing we want to do is create instability to the hillside below your home and then cause other issues ahead of time. So we'll keep in touch on working through this plan. I've been emailing Todd Lando today because I had a feeling you would be here, which is I'm glad I could put the face to the name. So we're working on that component of it. To Lucinda's question of red flag days, it's some of the policy issues I think we've got to work with through the town and other departments to see what is that even a possibility or what other issues did that cause? Because we talked about our aging community, and when we're trying to do a mass evacuation and we're telling everyone to go by car, stay in your vehicle, because that's the safest place to be as opposed to being on foot. How do we get these homeowners into a vehicle if their vehicle is parked down the hill? So those are some of the challenges as a community that we're going to have to struggle with and trying to come up with what's a good, happy median solution that we can live with. In regards to the release of information, insurance companies typically don't share information with each other or others because it's proprietary. With regards to the information that's collected within our inspection app, that is kept private and is not shared with the insurance industry. What we utilize it for is, are we targeting projects and are we targeting re-inspections based on where the known hazards are or the highest risk, so to speak. So we'll do that. And for Mr. Wolford, I think talking about green lawns, yes, green lawns don't burn and they are more fire resistant. However, I think that's outside of my lane when it comes to MMWD policy on what they want to do with water conservation. With wood fences and combustible materials, yes, wood fences have been an issue. So the new rules and regulations that you'll see coming down, I believe in 2026 is going to be the first time that there will going to be a part 7 of the Title 24, which is California specific wildland urban interface code, which will take sections of the California Building Code, sections of the Fire Code, slam them together and create its own code section. And then that will probably dictate of what that wooden fences look like. The biggest issue that we're seeing is the wooden fence connected to your home when you open and close your gate, your side gates. Those are that, if we can eliminate that combustibility and that chain going across of wood to wood to wood to wood, so forth, burning, we can eliminate it. What I always tell individuals when I'm out doing home assessments that aren't willing to remove their side yard fence due to privacy or any of that is I always tell them to have a bungee cord available and strap that door open before they leave. At least it keeps that door open and at least provides them a little bit of assistance. And then the other things we need to look at when it comes to combustible material around our homes is where are you putting your garbage cans? If you're told to evacuate, are they right up against the side of your house? All of our Amazon wood cardboard boxes, stuff like that. So, you know, it's not necessarily on a day-to-day an average hazard that we keep those things are next to our home. But if we're told to evacuate due to a vegetation fire, there's definitely some of those things we need to do to prepare our homes. So that way we can remove some of those combustible materials away.
Just one small point on that. I think just to highlight, I think Corte Madera is one of the few towns or cities to actually adopt an ordinance as part of our SB 9 ordinance that if you are encroaching within a certain distance, taking advantage of the rules that allow you to go very close to your side property line in your fence, requiring that that fence be non-combustible. So that's actually already sort of Corte Madera's tipped our toes into that world of actually requiring addressing fences, at least as it relates to the SB 9 lot split ordinance.
Yeah, that's a dedication of the foresight of your planning division and working hand in hand with us. And then there was one other component I was going to go on that. Oh, and then the zone 0, believe it or not, we have been enforcing zone 0 since 2019, 2020 on new construction and substantial remodels from lessons learned from Southern California, because if they're coming in for a permit, we can request whatever's being permitted. And so we've been doing that and working closely with our planning departments. And then the number of percentage that Mr. Wolford wanted to know, if, I can't recall the tail end of that. I think it was the number of percentage of non-respondent homeowners of doing their work. I can't tell you the number of percentage. I can tell you that of all the homes we've done, we've had 70% of homeowners open the report. So 70% of them know what's in there. Is just the taking action part that's challenging. And then there was one written comment from Patty Stolier. If you can read that one, Lorena.
Yes, she asked, or she said, I listened to an audio of communications during the LA fires. One official reported in that the PCH was completely gridlocked, and the response he got was to have people go on foot. I've always understood it as safest to stay in a car. Was this erroneous advice, or perhaps just the special circumstances of being adjacent to the ocean, or maybe a totally fake audio?
Personal opinion, I think it was erroneous advice. We always say, stay in your vehicle until a public safety official tells you to get out. So the people that left their vehicles abandoned did exactly what they were told to do. They followed directions, exactly what the public safety officials wanted them to do. They abandoned their vehicles at the request of public safety. I wasn't there. I didn't know what the fire behavior was, not sure what the circumstances were to cause public safety officials to have them leave their vehicles. However, what I can tell you is by looking at the damage of the trees or lack thereof, and no damage to the vehicles aside from bulldozer damage, it was survivable. So if you feel that you are not going to survive in your vehicle, you're definitely not going to survive outside of your vehicle. Firefighters take shelter inside of fire trucks when we're being overrun by fire, because we know that gives us added extra protection until the fire front blows through, which could be a few minutes. And then at that point, if the fire truck's on fire, then we get out. But till then, we don't. You know, and it's serious. That's how you have to look at it. It's that extra layer of protection. And let me tell you, passenger vehicles are built a lot better than fire trucks when it comes to insulation, and we're just big metal trucks when you think about it. So what I tell people is stay in your vehicles unless a safety official tells you not to.
Okay, well, this is a good, serious conversation. We've been at this for about an hour now, and we are not required to take any action here. So if there are any brief comments from council, we'll entertain those now.
Only one brief comment. You talked about how a number of agencies were pulling resources in order to kind of blitz these, like to surge inspectors to neighborhoods and work through them really fast. And I know that you said that staffing is an issue when it comes to administrative citations. Just wanted to put out there, and I'm sure you've thought of this already, but maybe if there's a way to pool efforts or pool resources among agencies to make administrative citation works, at least for the worst offenders, that might be an avenue for inquiry. That's all.
Yeah, I'll make it quick. I know MWPA is doing a lot of work and they do a lot of great work. I think we may just need to look, and it's in the work plan, maybe to repivot a little, still leverage off what they're doing, but I think we need to get more aggressive in some of these areas. That's my 2 cents on that. And I think we need to look at the funding because again, that's been cut from the last 4 years on the sales tax override. And just one other place, if you can take a look at, Todd or yourself, because I've heard comments, Madera del Presidio, they've gotten a lot of work in that neighborhood as far as home hardening and that kind of stuff. There's some concern about the ridge above them. And I know it gets tricky because Corte Madera starts rolling into the county space also. But it's just something, if Todd can reach out to their HOA or yourself and just contact out with them, that'd be great.
Yeah, we've been yelled at by the Tiburon Open Space District before.
The one thing that may help is MWPA did a walk around on the Tiburon side. There were a number of people there from Corte Madera, including Madera del Presidio, West Windward, and up in that area, because obviously the work that Southern Rim Fire is doing on that side of Tiburon affects the other side. And County Parks was there also. So thanks.
Will do. Thank you.
Anything down here? Jim, Rosa?
Just thank you for the great work you're doing and coordinating with other jurisdictions. It's great to see that pooling. If there's anything we can do to help you with that, please let us know.
Will do. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And to residents out there, don't kick that can down the road, especially when it's a gasoline can ready to catch fire. Thank you, Chief Rubin. Okay, we move on to the consent calendar. The purpose of this calendar is to group items together which are routine or who have been discussed previously and don't require further discussion. They'll be approved by a single motion, although any member of the public may comment on the consent calendar or may request removal of an item for discussion, as can the town council, town staff, or public. So do we have any requests for removal of any item from the consent calendar tonight? Not seeing anything in the public, not seeing anything there, anything online?
Nothing online and no email.
Okay, can I get a motion then for the consent calendar, please?
I'll go and make the motion to approve consent items 5A through 5F.
Second. Rosa.
And a roll call.
Councilmember Andrews,
Yes, ma'am.
Councilmember Beckman,
Yes.
Councilmember Casissa.
Yes.
Vice Mayor Thomas.
Yes.
Mayor Ravazio. Thank
Yes.
you. The motion carries.
Okay, moving on to 7A, our first business item of the night, consideration and possible adoption of a resolution authorizing the town manager to allocate up to $50,000 to the Corte Madera Chamber of Commerce for fiscal year 2025 expenses, including the 2025 Independence Day Parade, rent for office space, and operational support. Do we have a staff report?
So yes, I do, Madam Mayor and council members. I'm going to do this as a joint sort of presentation just to allow our members of the public here to have additional time if necessary, other than the 3 minutes for public comment. So I'm going to provide some background and then I will turn it over to Julie Kritzberger, Stan Hoffman from the Chamber. By way of background, as you recall, at its December 17th, 2024 meeting, the town council received the annual report and budget presentation from the Corte Madera Chamber of Commerce and ultimately approved and accepted that 2025 fiscal year 2025 Chamber of Commerce budget. At that meeting, the chamber discussed structural challenges to the chamber's budget since COVID-19 pandemic due to the significant reduction of transient occupancy tax revenue and increased expenses, including those related to the operating of the 4th of July parade, also referred to as the Independence Day Parade in the letter that we received from the chamber. Since the pandemic, the chamber has needed to utilize reserves to balance annual budgets and the fiscal year 2025 budget projected utilizing an additional $14,000 to about $52,000 in reserves, largely dependent upon Corte Madera in operational decisions this year. As you may be aware, that property was put up for sale in late 2024. And unfortunately, at this time, we don't have great information about what the future holds for that property. The town council, as I mentioned, approved the budget. On February 6th, 2025, the town council received a letter from the chamber, which is attachment 2 to your packet, requesting a $50,000 contribution to support the chamber and the 4th of July parade. It also states that the contribution would be reevaluated after the 4th of July. At that time, presumably expenses related to the event and TOT revenue would be better understood. Contribution would, as the letter states, would also support rent payments in fiscal year 2025. That was not included in the approved budget due to uncertainty around the chamber's office location and costs this year. And as the council is aware, the staff is working with the chamber on potential alternate locations for the chamber's office, given its current situation at the town center is somewhat tenuous in terms of being able to stay there beyond a few more months. So we've discussed through our council workshops at the January 23rd workshop. Obviously, the Corte Madera Chamber of Commerce provides important support and services to the Corte Madera business community, and in turn, Corte Madera benefits significantly from a healthy and vibrant business environment and community, as a significant portion of the town's revenues is derived from sales tax, which is applied to spending at our local businesses. So a healthy chamber equals, a healthy local economy and more revenue for the town. This request does not directly, in my view, directly address sort of the long-term financial challenges that the chamber faces more from a structural standpoint, but is an important source of one-time funds that could help in fiscal year 2025. And town staff intends to continue to work with the chamber to ensure its mission to support the town's business community can be sustained moving forward, and that the chamber continues to be able to deliver a successful parade, of course, as well. We're currently, I talked about the lease. We're also looking for support ways that the town can help support increasing chamber membership, promoting local hotel stays, and of course, continuing our partnership with the chamber in the 4th of July parade, as we do every year, continue to do that. Should the council authorize the requested contribution for the chamber's fiscal year 2025 budget, I would recommend that this be done in essentially 2 phases. From the town's fiscal year budget currently, could allocate $25,000 associated with the town council discretionary fund, and then subsequent to approving the fiscal year 25-26 budget, up to an additional $25,000 could be authorized tonight as the entirety of $50,000, but certainly would work with the chamber and Julie on understanding where the situation, what the situation is after July 1st and the TOT comes in and expenses related to the 4th of July are known at that time. And with that, I'm happy to answer any questions, but I actually would turn it over to Julie and Stan as well if they want to elaborate on the letter. Obviously, this was a letter that promulgated this meeting tonight, was the letter that came in from the chamber on February 6th. So they're here. Okay. In that capacity.
Good evening, Mayor Ravazio and council members. I'd like to thank you for considering the donation to the chamber. We were asking for the $50,000, which would continue our office space at Town Center for the rest of the year or until the intergenerational center is completed. The 4th of July Festival and continued work with the chamber supporting the business community and the residents. I appreciate your continued support and I look forward to working with the town and supporting our vital business community. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Julie. Stan, do you have something to add?
The business community, the chamber, our town government and our residents have been in a wonderful partnership. And it's been a pleasure for the chamber to put on the Independence Day Parade. I arrived in town in 1986 and we've worked independently. We've never asked for any help and we've been self-sufficient all these years, but circumstances, as Adam has pointed out, have changed and we're no longer able with our current model to keep our heads above water. And the Independence Day Parade is an integral part of this community. And we're asking for your help and supporting us. I also want to say that I have 9 more days left at the Village of Corte Madera, and then I'm retiring. So I want to thank all of you for the support you've given the business community and the chamber and how well you've treated Julie here. And I'm leaving, but I expect you to take good care of Julie when I'm again, thank you, everybody. And I hope you consider our request tonight. Thank you.
Thank you, both of you. So before we get to comments and a decision, are there questions from the council?
Yeah, can you just clarify, we're going to give them 25,000. If we vote on this tonight and approve, they'll get 25,000 now. And then what happens to the other 25,000? What's the timing of that money?
So it would be through the budgeting process in fiscal year 25-26. So assuming the council would approve the fiscal year 25-26 budget as it typically does in June, that money would be budgeted for in that fiscal year. I'm sure as Julie talked about, or the chamber talked about in their letter, they would reassess how much was actually needed at that point in time up to the other $25,000 that I'm describing here. So I'm assuming we'd have that conversation after the chamber and Julie has looked at all the expenses related to 4th of July and seeing where that puts them. There's also probably more information at that time about where they are from a rent perspective in terms of how much that's going to eat into the reserves. And so I think, and actually this may be a question for you, Julie, in terms of the intent of that money to make up and sort of not require the chamber to eat into its reserves in fiscal year 2025 and making sure that they're essentially balanced. But I leave that question to.
Okay. Anybody?
And then you'll report back to us after whatever meeting in July so that we know either chamber came back saying, hey, we need the whole 25 and we provided it, or we needed 10 or 15, whatever it is.
Yes, be happy to report on that.
Okay, thanks.
Jim.
Yeah, I'm looking over your 2025 proposed budget. And in terms of the 4th of July, you're budgeting roughly $59,000. How much of that has to be spent prior to July 4 versus after July 4?
Most of it's spent after July 4th.
Okay, anything from you, Rosa?
Splitting it 25-25 cause you problems?
No.
No?
No.
Rosa.
Yeah, so just a question about the planning of the parade. You would have a sense of all your cost by about when?
Probably sometimes after the 4th, because I'll have to get my police bill, my security, the public works bill. All of those bills don't come in until after the 4th.
Okay, all right, there's not a set. And I don't know if we want this, but do we want updates on the spending? Or, I mean, I don't know if we want that as it's being planned, or we're just, go forth and, spend as you need to.
Yes, I think, well, I'm comfortable with that.
Okay.
From town manager's perspective. Obviously, we work closely with Julie every year. There's not going to be some totally surprise expense. And
Right.
I don't believe, but so Julie, if you would let me know, I'm sure if there was.
Yes. Okay.
Okay, so I think that's all the questions from council. Not seeing anyone in the public who I think would have any comments or questions, unless I'm wrong. Is there anybody online?
No hands raised from attendees online or emailed public comment for this item.
Okay, we'll bring it back for a motion. And any comments first for a motion?
Before I make the motion, I can totally support this, giving them the 50,000, the 25 and the 25 split. I think the chamber's done a lot of work the last X amount of years, not just on the 4th of July, but just integrating the town with the business community. So I appreciate all that. And Stan, by the way, congratulations. I want to say on your retirement, greatly appreciated. I'll let Eli make comments and anybody else, and then I can make the motion. Thanks.
Yeah, I just wanted to say, I'm totally good with this. I think, if the chamber needs our help, if they're in a pinch, I want to step in and support them. I realize that TOT income, their income is not where, we would have hoped. But I've said repeatedly, I do want to see us sit down and have a more strategic discussion about what exactly it is that we want our chamber to do and what the level of budget and staffing that requires is, because I think that we can't keep allowing this, this system to perpetuate itself where poor Julie is, pushed to her limit, and I feel like, she's expected to run a chamber of commerce, but also run this parade, which is like, takes up half the year. I just feel like it's been too long, I think, since a critical eye has been taken to the question of exactly what do we expect of Julie and our Chamber of Commerce. And I want to see us not just kind of throw money at the problem, piecemeal without ever looking at the bigger question. So I'm happy to support this, but I would do so, with the ask that we do, schedule a time to actually sit down and have sort of a strategic planning session with the chamber, perhaps roping in some of our other community groups in town, and really try and untangle this knot of who's responsible for which events in town, because I feel like there's been shifts and there's been confusion, and I just want to make sure that everybody understands what their roles and responsibilities are, and then that everybody has the funding and the staffing, and whatever support they need from the town to be able to do what we're asking them to do. So that is all. Thank you.
And I would just add, yes, I think the Chamber of Commerce is very important to the town. And I want to congratulate Stan on a very well-deserved rest coming up. I know he has worked so hard for this town for so long, and he and I have been round and round on a few different things, but you have truly been one of the pillars of this community. And you will be missed. I'm going to miss your feisty answers to all my questions. And I think Eli's idea is really good. I don't know how we do it without a Brown Act violation and without, maybe it's the chamber and the town council have a joint meeting at some point to talk about things. I don't know how to set that up, but we'll leave that to Adam to figure out. And
Great.
Are we, any other comments?
Well, I was just going to remind everybody that before Stan was running the village, he was running town center. So you've been in town longer than I have.
He's looked at life from both sides now.
Yep.
I remember seeing you when my children were in strollers over going to McDonald's at Town Center. And you know how long that's been gone? Is before either of us had gray hair. So thank you.
Okay, and I
And-
believe Fred wanted to make a motion.
Yeah, I'll go ahead and make the motion to adopt resolution number 7/2025, authorizing the town manager to allocate up to 50,000 to the Corte Madera Chamber of Commerce for year 2025 expenses, including the 2025 Independence Day Parade, rent for office space and operational support.
Is there a second?
Second.
Councilmember Andrews?
Called you to vote.
Yes.
Councilmember Andrews. Councilmember Beckman?
Yes.
Councilmember Casissa?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Thomas?
Yes.
Mayor Ravazio?
Yes.
Thank you. The motion carries.
Thank you both
so
very much.
Thank you, everyone.
Wonderful. Thank you. Julie, can we ask you to throw a big party for him?
Yeah.
4th of July. There we go. Make him the Grand Marshal. Okay, up next is consideration and direction to staff regarding the creation of an employees housing program and the purchase of a below market rate unit from the Marin Housing Authority. And I believe we have Amy Lyle to give us a report.
Yes. Good evening, Mayor Ravazio and members of the council. Tonight, this is a continuation of a conversation we started at your strategic planning session around the potential creation of a staff employee housing program and a very unique opportunity that we have before us right now. Lorena, next slide, please. And so I just wanted to talk a little bit about the value of having this type of program and why I believe that you've had it on your list as far as a priority and part of our staff work program. And that's really because of the high housing costs we have here in Marin. It's very desirable to be able to have a local workforce and be able to offer employees a program like this. It's definitely been a challenge recruiting staff. And I know myself, I have people on my team who've had a lot of challenges finding housing within the area, and it's been a challenge to retain staff. I've even been helping looking for housing for employees. So it's valuable to really at least consider this as an option. And although this has been on your work plan, your priority list for a number of years now, it's one of these items that you really need kind of a breakthrough or an opportunity to venture into either producing the housing or purchasing the housing in some way. And the other thing I wanted to note, just for pure data, we have found that just based on employee self-reported addressing, that 53% of our employees live outside of Marin County. And we know the County of Marin has said 60% of their employees live outside of the county. So it is not just us. And there are other jurisdictions in Marin that have been grappling with this same issue. And so I was able to find two programs that are underway. There may be more. I've seen a few news articles of other cities and have not followed up to the point of getting confirmed information, but the town of Tiburon has been very helpful in talking through their program and what that looks like. So they actually own 9 rental units in the town of Tiburon, and that program's been underway for a number of years now. And then also the County of Marin has recently partnered with a developer to create a set aside of 20% of a housing development for qualifying county employees. And so that's underway. So that development is not going to be developed and available until 2027. Next slide, please. And so the unique opportunity that's before us is connection with Marin Housing. So the Marin Housing Authority, known as Marin Housing, they have a below market rate program that is in multiple jurisdictions. So they run a portfolio of properties that they manage. And some of these properties have deed restrictions that go 30 years, and some of them are in perpetuity. So there's quite a collection, and they actually manage about 20 properties within Corte Madera. And so basically they own or they provide ownership opportunities of these units, and these units remain basically at the sale price or a little above. And so they don't gain equity in the same way. And so these are meant to be kind of permanent affordable housing. And they're offered to individuals who are within a certain income range. And the Marin Housing monitors these homeowners to make sure they remain in these income ranges. And so they have to be pre-qualified to be able to purchase one of these homes. And as these turn over, they do provide jurisdictions an opportunity to consider purchasing these properties. And that's what we have before us. So 77 Parkview is a property that was ready to be for sale. We expressed interest in purchasing this unit. This was late November, December. And because we wanted to give some time to really explore what this looks like, Marin Housing purchased the property on our behalf. And so they are holding the property for us. We're in the process of creating an MOU to partner with them and cover the holding costs until we decide how we'd like to move forward. So that's the primary question before you tonight is how you want to proceed. But I'll get to that in a moment. First, I wanted to talk, sorry, Larry, I wanted to talk about this property. There's a few pictures up there. And so this is being offered to us at $250,000. I just looking around at the sale prices within this condo development, they generally go for about 1 million to 1.3 million. And this is a 2-bedroom, 1-bath condominium. It is an upstairs condo. It's about 852 square feet, so very small, built in the 80s. Very old. It has been updated. There are some new features, but ultimately it is an older condo in this development. And there are some HOA fees and holding costs associated with this. So that's why the MOU price with Marin Housing is about $800 per month. And so we would be paying that for the last couple of months. But depending on your decision tonight, that would be the cost moving forward and if we were to purchase the property. Next slide, please. And so just a little bit more about this unit and the program. So the below market rate deed restriction would remain on the property. It would be in perpetuity. And so that would mean for this specific unit, it would need to be rented at 120% of the average median income. And so the rent that could be charged is restricted to 30% of the family or person's income. So I just included a little table there just to show you for what this would look like. So if it were 2 people living in the home, the 120%, they would need to make 179,000 or less. And what Marin Housing does is they strive for 100% instead of 120%. So really finding those populations and those families that make around 100%. But that 120% is the limit for affordability. So, and this changes every year. So this goes up slightly every year in accordance with federal limits. Next slide, please. And so if if we were to build a program around this, we would have to create a policy and a process to be able to monitor this property. And so this is just a sampling of the things that we would need to flesh out. And so this would be looking at eligibility and preference criteria. We do have to adhere to fair housing regulations. So although this would be earmarked for a town employee, it would be also available to public safety, teachers, healthcare, or the community at large. And we would need to create some kind of weighted system through a lottery to be able to say town employees would have these extra points, public safety would have these extra points. So we need to make a very fair, transparent process to be able to offer this to a town employee. So I will say that we're learning. This is new to us. So I'm interested to hear what questions you have. We've met with Marin Housing a number of times and been talking with the town of Tiburon staff as well. So this is kind of a new area for us that we would be moving into if you want us to move forward with this program. And then the other thing I will note is that there is cost obviously associated with this. This is already on the work plan for 2025. But this being new, it will take some investment as far as staff time. Ballpark, probably 5,000 to 10,000, I would say, and not totally sure because it really depends once we get into the program what regulations we need to create and then what legal review is required. And then it would need to be marketed, doing outreach on providing transparency and that the unit is available for rent. Next slide, please. So this is just a little bit about the fair housing laws and some of the components that we need to consider when creating a program like this. We obviously would be just looking at this one unit. The town does own another unit that it is not currently below market rate and is not part of this, but could eventually be part of this program. And there could be an eventual addition to 2 units. So this is really kind of a potential start to looking into this more deeply. But it does require us to be thoughtful about how we monitor the unit and the affordability and that we have to have a lot of documentation for this process as well. So we'd be building a little bit of infrastructure to be monitoring and offering this unit, and then getting into a little bit of the property management business as well, which could be something that we could hire out. Next slide, please. So the question before you tonight is really how you'd like us to move forward. So the options are, 1, to direct us to move forward in creating this program, investing the time, and moving forward with the purchase of this below market rate unit, or passing on the opportunity at this time. I will say there may be some other options in the future. For instance, Corte Madera, if we in a few years move forward in envisioning what that may look like, and if housing's part of that consideration, there could be a potential partnership with the developer to create staff housing through that process, similar to what Marin County has done. But at this time, this is a very unique opportunity that we wanted to make sure to really vet and bring forward to you. And then the third option is really thinking about other options that may be available. So instead of the town purchasing a unit, there could be other opportunities for creating first-time homebuyer programs, rental assistance programs, or other types of programs. And I will say generally those are successful in larger cities where there is potentially a larger employee base and or a larger budget to be devoted to the housing issue itself. So with that, I'm happy to answer any questions that you have. I'm very curious what your questions will be, and please know that we may not know all your how to answer all your questions, but it is something that we could bring back if you wanted to have us invest the time and explore this further.
Excellent. Thank you, Amy. Okay, questions? Down here, Jim?
Yes. Do you envision this as the town owns the property free and clear, even though it's part of a homeowners association, and then rents it out at an affordable rate?
Correct. Yes, that's exactly the vision.
If the employee retires, would they be able to stay in the property? Or is that this sort of a nuance to think about down the road?
Yeah, and this is something that we could grapple with if we were to create a program, but most programs, the employee vacates if they're no longer an employee of this town or city.
And what is the criteria for the rental next door?
I'm not sure. I will defer to Adam.
So criteria by meaning, so it's a direct
How
sort of,
often is the rent reappraised?
yeah. So the last time it's currently being looked at right now as sort of in process of taking a fresh look at the lease. I think the last time it was increased was 2021 after. And so that's something that we do on a sort of a one-to-one level as a tenant landlord relationship. And so as to how that process actually included an employee and how that employee was selected, I can't speak to that. I wasn't involved in that process.
And next door, there's 2 units, top floor and lower level?
There is a lower level, and we've actually, our building official and some of our staff have sort of started to look at it. Right now, it's not able to be occupied, but there are some improvements that could be done to make it a separate unit. And then we've also sort of just talked even in long-term thinking, there are now, I know we have all these new rules with obviously ADUs that our residents can take advantage of. Those also theoretically could apply to town as well if we wanted to get into that business.
Good.
That's it.
All right. And just to clarify, the property next door, that's not below market?
Under a program where
Okay.
it's sort of policy wise stated that it's below market, but it is renting for.
Okay. Yeah. Whatever that means in Marin.
And I will just say with respect to that property, I mean, so at this, there are things that need to get improved with that property, and there are maintenance items that come up from time to time. At some point, though, it will require sort of more significant work, I think, to be up to standard as sort of a property that we would want to rent as a town to an employee.
And would the Marin Housing Authority be of help in getting this set up in the, structuring the eligibility? And I mean, could you get information from them or assistance from them in that?
Yeah, they've been very helpful so far. They do not, they're not involved in any programs where it's offered to like a staff or select group first. And so they actually helped us through their legal counsel determine if that's even possible. And so it was a yes. So then we have to kind of move forward in looking at how do we build that so it's equitable. So that's why they really suggested this kind of weighted system. So it'd be a lottery, but there'd be some priority given to town staff. But if we didn't have anyone available, then it would have to go to another tier. So that was their suggestion.
Right. So we couldn't sort of use it as a signing incentive or something, or a way to sort of advertise that we have housing and then to help us, recruit people.
Yeah, unfortunately, no, because you wouldn't be able, and it would be a very small opportunity of time when it would be vacant and you may have a recruitment out for a position that would meet that category. So I thought about that as well, because
Yeah.
we definitely had trouble recruiting staff because of housing prices here. But that's not quite how it's designed. And one thing I forgot to mention is that even if this were to be sold by Marin Housing and we didn't purchase it, our staff would be just as eligible to be able to try to purchase the unit. We do have one employee that lives within a BMR unit that it is monitored by Marin Housing. So sorry, I just wanted to mention that as well.
Right. Okay. Let's see, I wanted to know if firefighters would be eligible, but it sounds like they would be. So public safety people. And how are properties like this taxed?
So I did a quick little search before the meeting, and it looks like they still pay property taxes. So they're not exempt from property taxes in the way that some affordable units are.
Okay. And so it would be the same as with any property. There's the purchase price it starts with, and then year after year, it's reassessed at, a very artificial California rate, but
we own it.
Well, yeah, that's a
we still have
good,
to pay tax on it.
I don't think so.
I pay tax on my house.
I know. You're a private natural person.
Yeah.
I'm
Oh, but
thinking-
towns wouldn't? Oh, okay. That's my question. Yeah. Just trying to figure out the carrying cost.
Amy should know that.
This is a new area for me as well. I would say generally, local government property is tax exempt, but this is because we're renting it out and it's income producing. I'm not sure that's the case. We'd have to really look into it.
Yeah.
Okay.
And these are the type of questions that I think as you start opening it up, it gets
Getting into the
complicated really
weeds.
quickly.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. I'm just trying to figure out what it's going to actually cost the town to own it. So that's kind of why I'm asking. Let's see if I had any other questions. You should not write them in two different places.
while you're looking, can I preemptively reply to one of your questions?
Mhm.
I don't think I mentioned the rent that could be charged, but for this 2-bedroom unit, if there was a 2-person household making $179,000, the highest rent that we could charge would be about $4,000, which seems very high to me. So
Yeah.
that's obviously not, what we have to charge, but that is the most we could charge.
Okay.
So there would be some recouping of the cost over time.
Okay, great. All right. And I'll pass. I might have actually asked the question already that I was looking for.
Fred?
Thanks. In addition to 230, do you know, are there any initial costs regarding maintenance items that need to be fixed in that unit? In other words, would there be another outlay of 10 or 15,000? Any rough idea on that? And I may be getting ahead of this.
We visited the unit, but we haven't done anything thoroughly as far as investigating things that need to be fixed. It looks like they did do some work. There is a new water heater. There have been some permits pulled for various things. So I think there was an effort to make sure it was livable, but I'm sure there could always be things to be improved.
Okay. And then have you gotten any feedback from staff? I'm sure there's people that have heard about this. I mean, it's on our agenda for now. Have you gotten any feedback from employees, staff?
Yeah, I'll just say generally, I think, I personally was grappling with what kind of recommendation to provide, because this is an investment of time and effort, and there's some urgency around it because we are potentially paying this holding cost for every month that we're working on this. And although as busy as we are and as many things as we have on our work plan, when I talk to staff here, they're excited by the prospect. And I think it's a beneficial thing for us to be looking into, knowing that our teams really want to live here and want these opportunities to be presented. So that kind of shifted the way I was thinking about this. So I think there's a lot of support around creating this type of program from a staff perspective.
Okay. And then from a staff perspective, would you be, what group would be taking the lead on this? Would that be your group? And then if it is your group, do you have the bandwidth to take this on? Because there's like you mentioned, there's a sense of urgency. We can't sit here for like 9 months and then go, hey, because we have carrying costs that we're eating.
Yeah, that's a good question. It may not be me or my team specifically. It may be more of a team effort on this. And if it is my team specifically, I would say there are things within our work plan that would maybe be further delayed than what they are now, because this is really shifting to more of an urgent need to focus on if we were to get that direction tonight.
Okay. And we haven't seen an opportunity like this come up. I don't want to say forever because forever is forever, but have you, I mean.
No, and I would say somewhat unfortunate, but I think we have some new folks at Marin Housing that are sort of more open to sort of discussing these opportunities with us. And I think both Amy and I encouraged them and said, you need to talk to other cities as well about these opportunities as it comes up, because there may be other interest as well, and for other cities to purchase some of these units as sort of the first right of refusal. There are a limited set of these BMRs that were like built in the 80s and 90s where they only had 30-year terms for their required affordability. And then they renegotiate and do basically a longer 99-year one next time around. Most of the more recent BMR or affordable housing units are more like 55 years that the town has approved. And so I do think absolutely it's the first one we've seen that's been presented to us in this way that actually could fit. Is sort of fortuitous, and I'd say coincidental, that we were talking to the council in the last couple of years about employee housing opportunities, and then having this discussion with the staff over there, presenting it as an opportunity this time around. Sort of seems like just that unique opportunity presenting itself, and we don't expect any in the near term, any other units coming up in this way in the near term. One other, because I have the floor real quickly, I just wanted to say one other thing that may help the council. We haven't discussed this amongst the team yet, but if we move forward, I would also look at whether or not we could actually use our affordable housing fund to potentially as a source of funding for an affordable housing unit, as that was updated in 2022 to give the council a little bit more flexibility, that it's not only to be used for construction of new affordable housing units, but also could be used for acquisition. So there may be an opportunity there. That's, since in my experience, we've never had an opportunity to use that fund. So it's about $600,000. Again, it's sort of a fee that is charged to new development and new projects, and they basically have to put the money, and we reserve it into a special fund that's reserved for affordable housing.
I just have two other questions. One is along the funding lines, because I think in the staff report you mentioned potentially taking from capital projects fund, but it sounds like there may be another option. And again, I'm not looking for a decision tonight, but it sounds like there's other options besides capital projects.
We'll look into all options, and certainly from my perspective, that would be a preferred route if we can go that route and use the affordable housing fund.
Okay, and then just one last question: have you gotten any feedback from Tiburon or the county from the perspective of them owning these properties? Negatives, positives? Any feedback from them?
Yeah, not from the county because they haven't embarked on that program yet. There is a program I mentioned within the staff report about the county doing a housing assistance program pre-pandemic, and they have since decided not to continue that program. But the staff at Tiburon have been overwhelmingly saying it's a wonderful program. They have 9 units, and they have a property management company that helps them. It's all within one complex. And they say it's fantastic. And it's interesting. They said, because I asked, are you thinking of buying more units? And they said 9 is kind of the sweet spot for their size of their staff. And so they aren't looking at expanding beyond that number, but it sounds like it's working really well.
Okay, thanks. I won't ask you what our sweet spot is. Thanks.
Similar sized organizations though.
Just one small question. Is there an HOA fee on that property?
There is, and I'm sorry, I don't have the exact amount.
I feel like it's high.
Well, the holding costs that Marin Housing asked us was about $800 a month. So I'm not sure how much of that is the HOA fee.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. Thank you.
That was kind of my question too. In real estate, the housing cost, they call it the PITI, the PITI, which is the property itself, the insurance, which we would have to carry the insurance, the HOA dues, and the interest if we were going to have a mortgage, which obviously we're not going to do, and the property taxes. So I think the cost to own this property, and especially if you add in management, are going to be somewhat substantial. And I'm wondering, does any of that get paid by the homeowner? Depending on where we set the rent, would they do the HOA dues, or we would pay the HOA dues? So we'd be issuing monthly checks and having to really be an active owner of this property.
So the amount, and this is my understanding just from research, that the maximum that we can charge for rent is taking into account all of those costs. So for instance, utilities, we have to assume a certain amount of utilities, and that amount that we charge cannot be rent, utilities, HOA, all those things combined.
So that 4,000 is an all-inclusive number. Okay,
Correct.
that does make a little bit more sense. Okay, well, I don't see anyone in the public wanting to comment on this. Is there anybody online?
Yes, we have a hand raised from Roy Wolford.
Okay, Roy, you're on.
Okay, this is not personal. I took it very cold-heartedly look at the report. So parts of the rationale in the report justifying workforce housing is nonsense. Omission. Where is the complete financial analysis in the report? For example, how long does the town plan to hold the real estate? What will be the total all-in lifetime costs for acquiring the real estate and maintaining it? How many private businesses in Corte Madera provide workforce housing? Same question for Marin workforce housing. How have past town real estate deals worked out, such as the real estate at 26 Flying Cloud? What was the total all-in cost to the town of owning that real estate and maintaining it? What's the current liability of the shopping center and other owned property? There's a tell in the report, and that is the county no longer has workforce housing. Why? Is it because it added burden and financial drain on the taxpayers and created equity issues? How is the town's mission and values of diversity, equity, and inclusion going to be addressed? Are all 21 employees who live outside of Marin going to be provided workforce housing? If not, there is an inequity and exclusion for all who do not receive that financial benefit. If the council members feel this is such a great deal, you need to step up, walk the walk, and finance the real estate out of your own resources. Residents should not have to pay for this extraordinary employee benefit. All council members who vote yes on workforce housing need to identify the town and the residents for all of the financial cost expenses related to pre-owning and or owning that real estate. The council members need to reimburse the town's treasury for all the expenses related in this matter up to this date and beyond that $800. In sum, this is a very bad deal for the residents and an inequitable and exclusionary deal for employees who do not receive this overly generous benefit. The workforce housing is for a select few. To remind the council members, its mission and values is for all. Please vote this item down, no, on 7B. And also, I'll just mention, I hope all my questions get answered because during the Chief Martin's presentation, I asked 4 additional questions. Only 2 were answered.
Thank you very much, Roy. And please know that you can follow up with an email at any time. And I know that our staff, both Chief Martin and Amy, will be very happy to answer any of your questions in depth. We really appreciate your comments. Okay, bringing it back to council for comments on this.
I actually have a follow-up question. If we did purchase that unit, can we say 5 years from now, sell that unit?
Well, I think, and Amy, you can chime in here, but certainly that's part of what we'd have to work into any sort of agreement in buying this unit. And so I would think we anticipated a question like that, and we'd also look to have that flexibility. And I think the question would be whether Marin Housing Authority can take it back or would be willing to take it back under those circumstances and then continue to operate it as a affordable housing unit for the broader community as otherwise would be. So I think that's a discussion that we would want to have with Marin Housing Authority if we were going to move forward with this.
Okay, do we have some comments to help Amy and Adam figure out what to do with all this?
Okay, well, I want to also, now this is historically a below market unit, right? Yeah, so it will be in perpetuity below market, whether it's rented or sold.
Correct.
Okay, but we're trying to clarify whether or not the question was, can it be sold?
Yes, well, the deed restriction would remain.
Mhm.
So, for instance, one of the goals in our housing element is to preserve housing units that have such deed restrictions. So as they come up after 30 years, there's always that opportunity to either have Marin Housing purchase the property or the town. And in some jurisdictions, there's no purchasing opportunity and you lose that unit being below market rate. And so I think Marin Housing has the foresight to have this program and is making sure to preserve these units. We have the same obligation under our housing element to preserve these units. So in a way, we're assisting being able to do this. And we're just also hoping to offer this to staff, giving staff priority to be able to occupy this. But yeah, it is just kind of a guess that if we aren't able to remain in ownership or we don't want to, we could potentially have Marin Housing purchase the unit or put it up for sale for us.
Right.
But that deed restriction would remain. They're really trying to shift all of those time certain deed restrictions to in perpetuity or these 99-year opportunities.
Thank you.
Jim, what do you think?
Well, if I was halfway comfortable that it would be limited to town staff or staff of joint, the police department, fire department, school districts, I'd support it. But I remember from several years ago when we were talking about affordable housing, we got a long lecture about federal rules saying that basically you threw it open to the whole county. In fact, you even included East Bay counties, and they could participate in it. And so I would really want to see strict language, or no, I would want to see proof that we can limit it to town employees or police department or so on. Also, it'd be interesting to see the actual program that they've got over in Tiburon. Because I do remember from about a decade ago, there was an issue that a public servant over in a nearby town was living in one of those affordable houses over in Tiburon. And folks tried to make it into a scandal or something. So the devil's going to be in the details. And if we aren't willing to go into the details, maybe we shouldn't get into the real estate business.
Anybody down here?
Yeah, for me, I can agree with the concept because the concept makes total sense because we are providing something to our employees. But for me, I need more financial information because, for example, I know on the slide you said we can charge up to maximum of 4,000. 4,000 sounds like a great number. How many employees can afford 4,000 a month in rent? So I need the financial details with respect to, if you add the HOA, the insurance, property management, and then we need to add in a reserve because I don't want us to get to the point, if we move forward with this, digging into our general fund to start covering expenses. It should be at a break even plus, again, a little bit more to build up reserves. That's part one on the financial. And then the second part of the financial is if I assume we'd finance this, it doesn't make sense to go out and get a mortgage loan. To me, it just doesn't make sense. But is that money coming from, capital projects? If that happens, does that mean we're giving something up there? You mentioned development fees. If it's coming from development fees and we can use it, we have that money, that probably makes sense. But I think from those two financial aspects, I need more information because, again, I don't want to put the town in a negative position. But again, originally, conceptually, I think it makes sense. It's just the financial aspect of it at this point of time. Thanks.
I would agree with most of the comments that I've heard. I think to Jim's point, I agree that I think it should be, if we're going to do this and use, Corte Madera funds on this, I think it should only be occupied by, public sector employees who directly serve Corte Madera residents. And to Fred's point, I think, where I'm at big picture is I like the idea, but I want to know more. What I will say is that I think we do need, regardless of what we do on this particular unit, I do think we need to develop an actual employee, workforce housing program since we have a minimum of one unit already. And I think there's got to be a framework around that. So, I think that that's work that should probably be done regardless of what we do here. And then if we do ultimately decide to move ahead with 77 Parkview, then there's an added benefit to that. I think it's clear that, as Amy said, I don't think that we have an option for, if we're trying to think about how can we get creative in terms of helping with workforce housing outside of directly renting units, I don't think that we've got the resources to be able to provide like rental assistance or purchase assistance, to our staff in any amount that's going to be meaningful. I just think that would quickly become something that we couldn't afford as a town, unfortunately, as much as I would love to be able to provide that. I think a couple other thoughts, one, it came up earlier. I would just say in my mind, if a tenant of this, of any town-owned housing leaves employment with the town, I would think that they should absolutely vacate the housing. Otherwise, it wouldn't be serving as a, employee housing anymore. And I think it would defeat the purpose. I would also say that just around preference criteria was brought up. I think that does quickly get very uncomfortable, and my inclination would be to steer as far clear of that as possible. And if we can just say, hey, like we said, public sector employees who directly serve Corte Madera residents, and it's a lottery. That's it, and so I'd say if there's a way to keep it as simple as possible without running afoul of any of these fair housing demographic analysis and reporting exercises, I think that would probably be the way to keep it simplest. I think last thing I want to point out is, again, like I said, on this particular question and with regards to option one, yes, I want to know more. I'm interested. I want to know more, but I'm interested. I think option three, though, also is direct staff to explore additional opportunities related to housing for staff and to address long-term staff recruitment and retention needs. And it occurs to me that we do have a proposal in for a 99-unit 100% affordable multifamily project at 240 Tamil Vista, and those are 3 and 4 bedroom units. I know we have a lot of employees who are probably making around 100 or 120% AMI and have families, and I would think that that could probably be a great source of, I would hope, workforce housing for folks. There obviously we can let the market play out as it does, but I would also wonder if there's a opportunity for us to approach the developers and say, could you set aside some number of units for local public sector employees? I would hope that it wouldn't make much of a difference to the developer as long as the unit is rented out. I would imagine they don't care whether it's rented to somebody who's a town employee or not. But I feel like that would be a good avenue for inquiry as well. So those are my thoughts.
Thank you. And I find myself in agreement on all of the major points that were made. And I guess to wrap it up, I'd say if the carrying costs are only $800 a month and they'll let us go for another month, maybe we can kind of do a full court press and see what the total cost of the project would be. And I also think that just having it at multiple meetings, we'll find out more if the community has any strong opinions on this. I'm interested in how many might feel, as Mr. Wolford did, that it really is unfair. I didn't see it that way at all until he mentioned it, and then it kind of gave me a second thought. So I think just carrying it one more month would be a really good way to kind of vet it out a little bit if that's possible. And if the carrying costs are only $800 a month and we can buy another month, that seems like a pretty affordable option. Agree? I mean, I don't know what option that is on the.
Well, I think that what we're all saying is that we want more information.
Yeah.
So.
Right. And if we can take a whole nother month rather than.
Yeah. And if that works for you, Amy, if you have time to do all the research and answer those questions in a month.
It may not be a month. I'm thinking if we were to come back, it would maybe April or May, to be honest.
The county's okay holding the property. I mean, we're paying okay.
Yes.
No, I don't mean indefinitely, but if we had to hold it for like a few more months or whatever, the county's good with that?
Yes.
Okay, thanks.
So that's still a pretty affordable option if it's $800 a month, right? Everyone agree that that's.
Yeah.
Do we need to take a vote?
No, I think we have direction we need to sort of continue to basically develop the program. And in the meantime, we're going to be paying $800 a month.
Flesh out the
MHA.
details. Yeah.
But we're going to work, and Amy, and I'll support Amy as much as I can on developing this further and answering those questions. And really the input's been really great. So
And get the PR out there that we're talking about staff housing. That'll make us more interesting to. Well, we want people to come and comment. I think we always want people to come and comment. Right, the next meeting, right.
We can publicize the next meeting on our
Excellent.
newsletter and our normal channels.
Very good. Okay, so with that, we can move on. Everybody, we're okay to move on to 7C, which is consideration and possible adoption of a resolution creating a finance advisory committee for the town and the sanitary district. I assume we have a report from Adam. Thank you, Amy. Thanks so much.
thanks, Amy. Yes, I'm going to have, Lorena's going to give the report, and then I'll supplement as needed. So.
Thank you, Mayor Ravazio and council members. In January 2017, the town council established a finance ad hoc committee that comprised of the town manager, the finance director, and 2 other council members. That ad hoc committee was assigned to me as needed for the purpose of developing short and long-term strategies towards achieving fiscal sustainability, and to review and provide feedback on town financial matters as was needed. In 2018, the town council determined that the ad hoc committee's composition should be changed to include one community member, and instead of having two council members, have it be one council member and continue having the finance director and town manager serving on the ad hoc committee. But in the recruitment process, during that time, there were three members of the public, residents who applied to serve on the ad hoc, and it was found that they were all well qualified. So the town council actually approved an expansion of the composition of the ad hoc to include those three residents. Then in 2020, another change occurred when James Andrews, our now council member, left the council at that time, but he remained on the ad hoc committee and served as the fourth member of the public. And then Fred Casisa was elected to the council and appointed to fill the council member position that had been previously filled by James Andrews. So being that the composition has changed so much as was directed by council in 2018, in 2024, town manager Adam Wolf explained that he was recommending to the dissolution of the ad hoc committee as the composition had already gone through so much significant change. And then considering how the ad hoc has actually assisted the council in the past, staff proposed the creation of a finance committee as one of the projects listed in the work plan that you all approved at the February 4th meeting. And that new committee that staff is proposing would be a standing committee that would be subject to the Brown Act, which is different from the previous one that was an ad hoc committee and not open to the public. The purpose for this new committee would be to advise council on fiscal policy, investment and financing strategies, and other matters related to the town's long-term fiscal health as determined by the town manager or as directed by the town council. Staff is recommending that the, wait, give me 1 second. There's something really important that I needed to add. The Finance Advisory Committee would explicitly not perform town budget advisory or oversight functions, as those functions are most effectively and efficiently performed by the town council as a whole, as it has more intimate knowledge of the town priorities, programs, and strategic goals. So again, it would only advise council on fiscal policy, investment, and financing strategies and other matters related to the town's long-term fiscal health. We're proposing for the committee to be up to 5 residents with financial or governmental expertise, and also recommending the same recruitment process be followed as that of our other advisory bodies. And this new committee, in order to have committee members serve on a staggered basis, we are recommending setting 2 seats with a 1-year term, and then the remaining 3 seats with 2-year terms. And the dates are listed in the staff report. And this would all be effective July 1st of this year if it does get approved and we do receive applications when we initiate the recruitment process next month. All appointments would be set by council as we do now, and this committee would meet as necessary, and meetings would be open to the public and subject to Brown Act provisions. And I'm happy to answer any questions that you might have.
Thank you. Thank you, Lorena. Questions? Finance Committee members first.
Go, Fred.
I guess, shouldn't there be a town council member that chairs that committee? Because we did it, I know BPAC, I think Bob Ravazio chaired BPAC as a council member. And it seems like there's a connection with the council, not just as a liaison, but it seems like it would make more sense to have a council person chair it.
Yeah, I'd be interested in hearing what the other council members feel about that. I'm happy to share my opinion, but I'd rather have the council sort of maybe opine on that. It is not something that we've sort of moved away from that since obviously Bob Ravazio no longer served as on the committee. Once he, sorry, we moved away from actually having a council member on any of the advisory bodies at this point in time. And my personal feeling is that, essentially that voice can potentially overpower sort of the conversation that would otherwise happen in a committee like this. And so if the council wants an advisory body to sort of give it more, a
Third party.
true, true, I guess third party is a good way of describing it. Advice on sort of financial matters, that would be my recommendation to.
Well, plus
not
we
have a
don't
council
know that we'll always have a financial expert on the council. You might end up with no Jim and no Fred, and so.
And
it
generally,
makes sense.
But it's also an
Generally,
opportunity for
advisory
somebody, it's also an
bodies-
opportunity for somebody else to become familiar with the finance too. It doesn't necessarily have to be Jim or myself.
Okay. Okay, questions first? Sorry. Yeah, oh, Amy, sorry.
Yeah, generally an advisory body, advises the council as a whole, and its members are citizens who, are serving to do that. Once you put a council member on it, it does change the nature of the entity. I mean, you can create committees that are a mix of people. You do have to be really careful with Brown Act issues and otherwise, but the standard practice is you have citizens to advise on these particular issues.
Okay, any other questions? Jim?
Well, I have a question about the sentence that reads, "The fact is not intended to perform budget advisory or oversight functions." I think that should be modified to read, "Fact may perform budget advisory or oversight functions as needed." Because one thing, if you look at the history of this town, we've had situations where folks didn't worry about finances. Then we ran into a wall. We had to spend half a decade rebuilding staff after we fired everybody. And I would really like to, if this committee is set up, to have sort of an institutional memory so that Fred and I roll off council, there'd be a group of 5 people who can remember stuff that happened 4 years ago, 3 years ago. And so that's where I would modify that one sentence.
But what about longer terms? You said just 1 and 2 year. Are there any committees that have a longer term of service?
So it would be, those would be the terms set in the first round of appointments, but they're more than welcome to apply for multiple.
Continue, no term limits there.
Correct.
Now, the terms would be 2 years. It's just when you start the committee, you want to stagger.
Right.
So some people would initially have a 1-year term, but
And they
can
can
certainly
reapply.
reapply.
I was just trying to get to your 4-year institutional memory with 2-year terms, but if people can reapply and there's no limit to their term.
Also, if whoever's elected a year and a half from now, they should have an opportunity to review the members of the committees.
Anything else, anybody? Do we want to make a motion on this?
I would just say a couple thoughts. I think, well, I'll wait until after public comment, I guess.
Oh, public comment. Well, we have no one in the audience, so I will assume no public comment here. Is there anyone online?
We don't have any hands raised from attendees online or emailed public comment for this item.
Okay, so I'll bring it back to council.
All right. So my 2 thoughts would be, one, I actually feel pretty strongly that we shouldn't have any council members on this just because it's a body that advises the council, and I don't think we should be advising ourselves. So that's that. And then on budget and oversight, I think, I feel like historically the finance committee has not had budget as their purview, right? I think budget is the council and staff's purview, but I think that the purpose of the Financial Oversight Committee was to advise us on things like bonding strategy and things like that. You know, and obviously that's not like our job as the council is to be watching the budget, right? And if you have council members not doing their jobs, like that's a problem. But that's the same as with any other area that we have purview over.
The committee, when it was first set up, the town manager would run the budget by the advisory committee just to get our reaction, because when does the council see the united total consolidated budget? Is it the Friday before they vote on it?
There's usually two budget meetings.
Or does it, do we see the full budget a month in advance?
Yeah, I think we usually see it 2 to 4 weeks in advance.
Okay.
Yeah.
To that point, if I may, and this is something that certainly the council could provide direction to staff if that was something that the council wanted to do, was see it earlier. I mean, you know, those are the conversations we could certainly enter into and try to prepare something well ahead of time and have more of that discussion with the council versus sort of a advisory body. I just worry about sort of the council and really having that understanding of going through the work plan and the way that, especially with how we're set up now, the strategic priorities, you know, that's not really relayed down to the advisory bodies in the same way that it's held with the council, especially being all in the same room. And so to me, it creates another layer in which maybe it creates a more inefficient process of actually setting the priorities through the budget process.
Unless they're specifically limited to not what we are funding, but how we are funding it. I mean, obviously, we don't want them to say, no, we don't think we should be renovating the rec center. We want them to say, here's a way to do that financially that makes the most sense.
If I can, there is overlap. I do see overlap in the long-term budget projections, and that discussion certainly gets into an overlap that has been very helpful in the past in sort of setting up, discussing pension liabilities and whatnot over the long term in the horizon, and that can help inform how we want to make investments going forward or create reserve policies and things like that. So it was just more on the year-to-year budget.
Yeah, that resonates with me. I agree with that, because I think longer picture, where our expenses headed and where our revenues headed, that I think is a good question to run by the finance committee. But the annual budget year to year, that's effectively a policy discussion, right? And that is the council's purview.
I would take the other side. I think it's okay with having them do a high level look at the budget. Not to get in, like Pat, like you're saying, not to get in the nuts and bolts and start going, hey, we shouldn't be funding whatever for a project or stuff like that. But I think needs to be another set of eyes that's looking at it. Because I don't know if anybody realized, but 5B tonight, we went from having a $700 some odd thousand surplus in December on our budget. We're now running end of January a 1.3 million deficit. We had a $2 million swing in 1 month. So again, I think having a second set of eyes on it, just again on a high level, I don't think it can hurt. But and I hear what you're saying. It's not for them to set policy, but they may see things in a different light or something we're not looking at.
Yeah, I mean, I think with what you mentioned on 5B, I think a lot of that type of thing comes from there are certain tax disbursements that are maybe made once a quarter or something. And so if you catch the wrong month-to-month statement, you're going to be like, holy heck, what happened here? But regardless, I think, I think big picture, when you look at the year-to-year budget, it's either a policy discussion or it's is the budget balanced, right? Did you, are you spending less than you're taking in? And I think, that's our job to do that. And if council members are on council who can't do that, that's on the voters. They elected the wrong council members, right? But I do think, I think the bigger picture, the more strategic, where are things headed and do we need to make any kind of strategic pivots? I think that's exactly where I would imagine wanting a finance committee to give third-party advice.
But that will require
them to look at the budget.
3 to 5 year forecast of the budget produced on a regular basis.
Which I think, yeah.
That would be probably like ideal and in a perfect world, but I think that it could be-
Vice Mayor.
I think, yeah, that would be ideal and in a perfect world, but we don't have. You're asking budget going forward or just budget looking backward,
Uh,
like trend, or are you looking for?
Well, you look at the historical
Right.
to see where the future trend will be. I know that last time I saw a 5-year projection, we were about to run into a structural deficit. Okay.
I mean, I think it's come up multiple times at this council over the last year that we'd like to get a little bit more beefy on the projections that we're seeing, and on those types of exercises that we're doing, at the staff level. But I think that would be exactly the type of information that we would want this oversight committee to be opining on.
They
Yeah.
could look at that.
Right.
you know.
Yes, and I agree. I have no problem with staff preparing those projections over the 5-year, both on the capital side and on the on the operating side as well. And that's something I would expect we would continue going forward to the extent, you're not, again, you're not getting into the fine details of every different budget item, but looking the way that Daria has presented them in the past year and 2 years, I think that's exactly what I would expect to go forward with this committee.
Well, and I think the details in terms of what their actual job would be worked out by Adam. And I think we can trust Adam to set it up so that our wishes or our needs are met, right? It doesn't have to be in the resolution,
Right.
those details.
I think we also say, if there is a specific item that came up during the course of the year, the council wanted, hey, run that. And I think this came up with respect
We did
to the
that.
sewer.
Yeah,
rate
because
fees.
it was a
Hey,
big number and I was afraid of it. And
Right.
made me feel so good to be able to have that committee to go to and say, what do you guys think?
Yeah.
So that we don't have to take responsibility on our shoulders that we may not be qualified to do. Some of us, anyway.
So I guess that is how we're making the resolution, that we're going to expand their responsibility a little bit toward, they will look at the budget, but not items, but just sort of look at trends. Are we changing
Yeah, I
their
would
job a little?
I would keep it general, just say they may be asked to, or they,
As needed.
I think it's in
The
the
sentence
It helps.
resolution.
is not, just say may
include.
something.
Yeah.
So the resolution right now says create a committee to advise
it's
council
needed.
on fiscal policy, investment and financing strategies and other matters related to long-term fiscal health of the town and
Perfect.
sanitary district number 2.
And you can even add at the discretion of the town manager in conjunction with advice from the council, if you want to go that detail, but I don't think we need that.
I think it says or has directed by the town.
Yeah.
Specificity is always a good thing.
Okay,
Then we
so
have
do
to
we
look
have a
back.
motion? Does somebody have a motion?
I'll
move.
move it as amended.
Yeah, okay, so do we need to read it out?
Did we, I don't know what was amended.
I'm sorry, before we do that, can I just make a motion to extend our meeting 15 minutes or half an
Oh.
hour because it's past 9:30?
It,
Oh, sorry, I'm looking at that clock.
Second,
Oh, it's only 9:27.
All right, 3 minutes to finish.
Okay, let's talk fast.
I don't think we caught what the amendment was because I believe the resolution, after I read it, it seemed like you were all in agreement that it kind of covered what you're intending for the committee to oversee, which is to advise council on fiscal policy, investment and financing strategies and other matters relating to long-term fiscal health of the town and sanitary district number 2.
Yeah, perfect.
That's in the
Right,
resolution.
so the other language isn't actually in the resolution.
Do you want the other language, Jim?
let me think about it.
You look, it's under purpose, I think. If you look at under what the purpose is, it expands the warehouse.
So we're basically going to delete the last sentence.
Oh, I see. You're looking at, yeah, we're not looking at, you're looking at the actual resolution, right? And
I'm looking at the resolution. If you look at the resolution, after it says now therefore be it resolved under purpose, it lays it out in more detail.
okay,
Okay. And so are we taking the last sentence, that purpose paragraph out and substituting Lorena's language?
What I read is in the whereas clause, the second whereas clause that's in the resolution. And if your intent is to change the budgetary restrictions, I guess you're suggesting to delete the last sentence under section 1 purpose.
Yes.
So if we were to delete that, it would read the Finance Advisory Committee shall be the advisory body to the town council in its role as council and as board members of the town's subsidiary district, sanitary district number 2 on matters related to fiscal policy, investment and financing strategies as determined by the town manager or as directed by the town council. And that would be that.
Good.
Good. Okay, so we have a motion on the floor to approve
second,
it as read and a second from Rosa.
Councilmember Andrews,
Yes, as amended.
Councilmember Beckman,
Yes.
Councilmember Casissa.
Yes.
Vice Mayor Thomas,
yes.
Mayor Ravazio.
Yes,
Thank you. The motion carries.
And I have 9:30, so I'll make the motion to extend the meeting another half hour.
I'll second.
Councilmember Andrews,
Yes.
Councilmember Beckman,
Yes.
Councilmember Casissa.
Yes.
Vice Mayor Thomas.
Yes.
Mayor Ravazio.
Yes,
Thank you. The motion carries.
but it shouldn't take nearly that long to get through the council reports, starting with town manager.
Only just quickly, and I think this was mentioned by Chief Martin, but we will be receiving new updated maps related to the hazard severity zones. And so they will require some work on behalf of CMFA and as well in conjunction with the town of Corte Madera, because we have to adopt those locally through our own ordinance. Other than that, nothing else to report.
And who wants to go first here? Let's do it popcorn style. Just jump in.
Okay. On 2/12, I attended the Scotty Lap Skate Park opening. It's very lovely. And on 2/13, the Central Marin Fire Council, where we reviewed the Citygate report on the council. Catherine Way is the chair, and I am now the vice chair.
Who's next? Jim?
Nothing to report.
Fred?
In 210, I attended an RVPA subcommittee. I'm actually chairing that subcommittee. It includes representatives from Larkspur, Sleepy Hollow, Ross, and then myself, and also the 4 chiefs. That working group is looking at the JPA as far as revenue expenses, centralized billing, and then also reserve formula. There's a lot of technical aspects to it, and that's going to go on for a while. 212, I attended the skateboard park opening, which was a great event. And on 213, I attended the CMPA council meeting, which I'm now chairing. 2 items there. One is CMPA is going to be purchasing 2 more EV marked police cars. They're actually for the command staff. So that's why they're purchasing 2, because they actually run them 24/7. So one will charge while the other one is in use. And those are actually being purchased out of Arizona. He couldn't find anybody in California that they could provide them to. And the other thing is there's a new state law where law enforcement has to provide a staffing report is just for informational purposes to the council. Out of that, there's 4 vacancies. So Chief Norton and his staff, they did a really good job with using social media to get for a recruitment type thing. Said last year they had over 250 applications or interviews they conducted. Obviously it whittles down, but the staffing levels, they're not totally up, but they're a lot better than I think they were a year ago. So there's a lot more move in that area. Thanks.
Eli.
On February 10th, I attended a Cal Cities meeting where we elected Jill Hoffman of Sausalito, our new North Bay Division president. On February 11th, I participated in a meeting with the mayor and staff and R3 to start kind of thinking about future waste hauling contract. Also on the 11th, attended a Central Marin Sanitation Agency meeting. Just wanted to share that Central Marin Sanitation Agency is one of just 3 or 4 wastewater treatment plants in the entire country that is energy positive, meaning it generates more energy than it needs to power its own operations and is a net exporter back to the grid, which is pretty cool. And on February 12th, no, I don't know why I have a date on this, but today I got lunch with Stan Hoffman to mark his retirement, and he already came in, but I wanted to shout him out. It's almost 40 years that he's been, with our community, and including serving as president of the Chamber of Commerce, I think multiple times. So he's left a mark, and we're going to miss him.
Okay, well, all of you just reminded me of all the meetings that I went to that I wasn't going to report. So I won't repeat them all, but I will say that on the Scotty Lap Skate Park opening, Tim Barry deserves a great applause for changing the date at the last minute to get it in on Wednesday before the downpour started on Thursday. So that kind of last minute jostling doesn't often get recognized, but that was a really good move on his part. And I guess that's all. That's all I have. So other than the other things that you mentioned that I was at, which I. So with that, discussion of the draft agenda for the upcoming town council meeting. Does anyone have any concerns about that? Any suggested additions? Or are we ready to adjourn? We are adjourned.